Hello, Vasili.
Hey, Jeff.
It has been a while.
It has. I think I was on probably around February of this year I think when I was probably in the lead up to my Kickstarter. So it's almost been, I think it's been 9 months
Yes,
maybe even longer.
yeah, the for Dungeon. For those that are listening in the
Yes,
distant future,
yes, yes.
you'll say, "Well, Vasili has 37 Kickstarters in his lifetime. Which one are they
Right.
referring to?"
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was my first and only up until this point. So hopefully there'll be another one in February.
So is this Dungeon 2?
Not really. I'm working on Dungeon 2, but it's for Aquilus issue 3, which is my weird fantasy zine. And that's been something it's been brewing for a while, and it's kind of been finished for a while as well. But I just wanted to see if I just wanted to see how it would go just being released on Kickstarter. You know, maybe with some stretch goals of doing some more art, because I always have the question mark about which I don't know the answer to, and it is a point of conversation on on social media amongst the RPG community, and that's how well do things how well do publication releases go that are on Kickstarter versus not on Kickstarter. So that's just so I think a lot of a lot of creators claim that when they're releasing things on Kickstarter, I mean, obviously they get the sort of they get the focus, they get the interest is there, and I just kind of so I've released the first two issues of Aquilus just not on Kickstarter. They just went straight onto Drive Through RPG and available in print on my store. So I sort of thought, for the third issue, I'll see how I'll put it on Kickstarter and see how it goes, and then maybe it'll give me a better idea of how many copies to print, for example.
Oh, yeah, that definitely helps. I think too. Yeah, I think definitely by far its greatest advantage is the marketing aspect, and it does it very well. Um, and also, especially since you've already greased the skid, so to speak, with Dungeon, I'm sure it will help it be even more popular.
Yeah, I hope so, and I think with Dungeon, the second issue as well, because I work on things concurrently. I mean, I've started working on Dungeon in the sense that I've got a really good idea of, I've got a good idea of, the next 10 levels. I've actually written out what most of the rooms are, but I haven't really started on doing the maps or the formatting or the art. And one thing I didn't really want to do on Kickstarter or do on a Kickstarter is actually put something up there that's not at least kind of 95% finished, because I had a little bit to do on my first Kickstarter, which was, I had to commission a lot of art. For example, I had to commission most of the art, which actually, came from the Kickstarter, and that actually took significantly more time than I thought. So, I think if I go into Kickstarters in the future, it'll be basically almost having it ready to go, where I can spend a few months kind of massaging the final sort of bits, the polishing, rather than have stuff to do. And I feel that if I went to Dungeon, if I did Dungeon in February, which is only 3 months away, I think I'd probably be 50% of the way through it, and I would have to give myself like at least a year's lead time to kind of finish everything. It's just something I don't really want to do.
Right, right, because that does put a lot of pressure, and especially,
It's a lot of pressure.
yeah, it is kind of strange. What at what point getting to a certain point, and I think the other thing you mentioned about delays, it's a lot like doing like even like projects. You think, I'm going to paint a room, should take a day, but always, something
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
up that you don't expect, and things take longer than you plan. And you're right. It's astounding the number of things that can come in to complicate and to delay a project.
yeah, I mean, a lot of things come in, and in my instance, art was a big delay, and and I think the delay was that I did have commitments for from a number of artists, but a couple took much longer than I thought, and I think that these things can just kind of blow out quickly, and by the time you have to do the printing, I mean, the packing took like a couple of weeks, took like 3 weeks just to ship everything out.
Right.
So all of that kind of stuff, I think, no, it might be better to actually have a project finished, before going on Kickstarter. So you don't really, just so you have a better sense of things and don't disappoint your backers by, sending them, putting an update saying, well, sorry, it's going to be 2 months late because of such and such. I'd rather just, yeah, I'd feel more comfortable. So that's why I'm doing the third issue of my zine instead, and hopefully do Dungeon for another Kickstarter, maybe mid to late next year sometime.
Yeah, right. And I think the thing is, I mean, especially, I mean, this isn't our full-time gig, so there's no point in putting ourselves through. It's already stressful enough just to do a thing, let alone to
yeah, it is.
To all of a sudden, commit to that many hours of trying to get things done in a short amount of time. It is hard. And I think, and definitely for me, I took, years ago, I took a project management class. Our company held. It was like a 3-day course or something. And he talked about the worry curve, and you want to push. You have a deadline. Most people have that worry curve right up to that deadline. It's a huge mound. Instead, he talked about pushing the worry curve back. You still have that curve when you hit up, but you need to start pushing the worry further on, so it's not as intense, but more constant. Instead of so maybe that's where it's like, you can kind of create your own worry curve by saying, I'm going to go to Kickstarter by a certain amount of time, but I need to have that. Helps drive you to get to a certain point. But boy, once you commit and people pay, you're definitely at that point, more pressure's being added.
Yeah, and just remind me, did you do Gary's appendix for Kickstarter?
I did.
That you did, yeah. And you've done one since as well. You've done
I did.
One.
Yeah, Fane of the Fly God. That's within.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So one ended at the end of August, and then one started at the beginning of September.
Right. And have you fulfilled Fane of the Fly God yet?
No, that one I have not. That one. So I got the proof. So I went to order the proof copy, and so this little insight. So have you done any fulfillment through Lulu?
I have not. No, I've never done. No, I have not done that. I've bought things from Lulu before, but I've never actually printed books there.
So I've gone around the international shipping problem, I should say, by using Lulu for POD for non-US backers.
Mm-hmm.
Works great. But when you do it, you're manually entering each address separately, and it goes through Stripe. Not a big deal, except I went and I ordered the proof copy for Fane of the Fly God. Everything's fine, and then a couple days later, I was at work going to my car at lunchtime, and all of a sudden it hit me. It's like, I think the last address I sent to that was loaded in when I bought that copy.
Right.
And so I go, and sure enough, I sent a copy to England. And so it didn't start printing yet. And then they, so I'm like, they said, we caught it. It has not printed yet, but just be aware, we got the right address, but be aware that any shipping or tracking info will show the old address, not your address.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I got a notification it shipped, and it hasn't come yet. And last week I said, it still hasn't come yet. I'm really not sure. They can't even tell me, like, their information. They know they took it, but they have no tracking information on this because of the way this thing was fouled up. So I either should have a book this week, my proof copy, or they'll do another one, which will delay me another 3 weeks. So talk about delays.
Right. Why did you decide to do it with Lulu and not somewhere like Mixam, which is where the RPG community usually gets their kind of print on demands? I mean, you actually did that just to mainly circumvent the international shipping issue?
Yeah, so I ship it individually. So it's each individual person. It's a new address for each person. I ship it out through Lulu.
Right.
And so and so I'm not doing a print run. So my costs are higher for that.
Right.
But the shipping is actually fairly reasonable. So shipping and handling, shipping and taxes can range between $6 and $9.
That's to ship internationally?
Yeah, because what it's doing is they're using whoever Lulu's using, they got somebody in England, so shipping there is real cheap. So they have like probably a source somewhere in so usually England's pretty decent. Europe's not too bad. But the most expensive is Japan and Australia and New Zealand.
Right. I actually, when I shipped Dungeon overseas, I think I had about 300 people that bought the zine, bought the print version of the zine who were outside the US. And I use an online shipping service called Pirate Ship, which I think what they do is that they bulk buy off USPS, and a lot of creators use it. I think I saw it on Twitter a year or so ago.
Yeah.
And what they do is that they charge a standard $10.99 to ship anywhere in the world, to ship a zine anywhere in the world. So that's I mean, that's who I use to ship every copy of Dungeon. And what was good about that is I was able to export. I was able to export all the backers as a kind of as a spreadsheet and upload it onto Pirate Ship and do the entire thing in one fell swoop.
Yeah, I use Pirate Ship. So I didn't do fulfillment for Gary's other than Lulu. I'll be doing all the fulfillment for Thane. I do use Pirate Ship, but I didn't try it for the international.
Right.
But the question is, that's a good question, because it's not that bad a deal for some people. That's a good question. What do you think? I wonder. This is where it gets kind of interesting. So if you were to have done this through Lulu, it would have cut back the shipping. But it's more of a hassle for you to be putting each individual address, because Pirate Ship, you can just zip them out.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it just wouldn't have been tenable to actually do it to do it per address, but I think obviously the issue that I had is that I had to. I mean, look, uploading it's not too big a deal. It's probably slightly more expensive than Lulu at $10.99 a copy. But then I had to put each one in an individual plastic sleeve. I then had to put each one in its own sort of. So I had to do all the packing as well. So I think so all of that adds a lot of time and cost to it, because when you actually as when you do a Kickstarter, there's not only the cost in the shipping, but there's also the cost in the packing materials as well, which in my case ended up costing hundreds and hundreds of dollars to actually get 1,200 like craft sturdy envelopes. I mean, that was, I think, there's kind of $600 just there.
It's kind of crazy when you start spending that kind of money for those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's like $700. I think it was more, actually. I can't remember what it cost me to buy craft envelopes, but I think they're almost like $1 a piece. Or they're kind of 70 cents a piece, because they're very sturdy and they simply don't bend. But all of that just adds, like almost, I mean, just it all adds up. And then buying plastic sleeves to put each zine in, that adds up. And so there's actually a lot in the there's just a lot in the cost of packing and shipping zines from Kickstarter, aside from the printing costs.
Right. Yeah, I remember. I think there's a friend. He does. I say friend, but I'll call him friend. He did a Kickstarter. Had bought boxes, like a lot of boxes, and they like delivered the boxes. He's just like like if you order like say 500 boxes, you don't think about it, but then when you actually, of course they were. I don't think they were assembled, but those take up a lot of room. You don't really think about like how much room things start to take up until you start ordering large quantities of them.
Yeah, they take up an incredible amount of room, and it actually takes. The other thing it takes a really really long time to ship everything as well. Like the physically, I mean, I live in New York City, so I actually physically had to walk each box to the post office, which is not far from me, thankfully. But I was actually walking down the street with two boxes under my arms at a time, with like 80 envelopes full of zines because that's all I could carry. So I had to do that trip. I had to do that trip to the post office about 14 times, and that was
no,
over the course of. And that
no
was over the
Sherpa.
course of.
You couldn't find a Sherpa in New York.
Well, no, because look, everything's kind of walkable, or So I mean, you can do everything by the subway or walking here. So I decided to walk, but it took like 14 trips, and that's why I staggered it over a couple of weeks or 3 weeks. Like I was doing about 2 or 3 of those a day, and then spending a day packing and stuff. So, but that's what you get. That's what you get when you do it all yourself. I mean, there are sort of there are creators who go to that next stage who might get a fulfillment partner like Exalted Funeral to do it, but because I'd never done it before, I thought, well, I better just do absolutely everything just to see what every step of the procedure's like.
Yeah, I think it comes down to now what your time and your time versus money, and it probably depends where your Kickstarter, what it funds at. I mean, all those things kind of start to add in, but then you can
Yeah, and
reverse it and start saying, well, if I'm paying that much, I could also just pay myself to do that.
yeah, I could, yeah, and I think the other thing, I mean, because my Kickstarter, I mean, was so was kind of underpriced. I mean, I really didn't end up making much money from it at all, but in terms of any profit, I suppose, because I kind of underpriced it. I don't know why, but I think if I was to factor in getting a fulfillment partner and getting charged like a couple of bucks a book to ship, handling, then that would have added another like $2,500 to the entire thing, and it just wouldn't have been worth it.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, you're right, and those things are. You think of. It's easy to think about, like you say, talking about earlier about the about writing, heading off to do some writing, but we kind of associate that and layout, but it just there's a lot of you know doing a Kickstarter. It's also writing out your the words in your Kickstarter and setting up if you're doing backer kits, setting those things up. There's just a lot of time. There's a lot of energy put into.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot, and I think there is a lot, and it was just like how we started the conversation. I just sort of wonder if that's if that's basically for creators to have some sort of presence. I really think that in most cases Kickstarter's necessary.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, because I can tell from my numbers, like I mentioned on previous podcast, but like I did Scoundrels. I think I made $2,000. I was an unknown. I'm still relatively unknown, but I'm at least a little more known. Putting out this thing that like I'm still shocked people bought it. I mean, it would never happen without Kickstarter. I mean, there is no way this could have worked any other way. There's no way to reach people, initially. It's definitely a way that especially at least for me, I say there's no way to that degree that would have ever worked.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's no way to that sort of degree. Like, for me to have just released my zine Dungeon and just to have put it out in the open, just on my store and released it on Drive-Thru RPG. I mean, I sold 1,250 copies on Kickstarter. I think that would have taken me forever to actually, if I ever even got there, to have done it just if I'd put it out in the wild, without Kickstarter. I mean, I just may have never ever reached. I
No,
may have never ever sold that many copies ever.
the only way to do it would be you go to Gen Con, get a booth, you go to all these, these things and get a booth, spend all that time
That's
on the
right.
road, all that
That's right.
cost, and
That's
slowly
right.
build it up. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's pretty crazy. But anyway, so it's good to hear. We got some more product coming down the road.
More coming down the road. Yes.
Yeah, it's always it's always on to the next. There's very little time for any rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing I was wanting to have you on, we talked about was it seemed like people are a little less excited now about, when I say excited, I mean upset, but basically AI art generators in general, but really probably Midjourney is where I've had my most experience. And then it's kind of interesting that as of late, AI art has kind of, I'm not sure what more recent developments have caused multiple companies to be able to, they're putting these products. When I say products, I mean these generation tools out, and they seem to be relatively decent for what they're doing. It seems like there's a lot of consternation, a lot of fear. What's your take on this whole AI?
Well, I mean, I followed I followed the Midjourney story since it sort of first came into the conversation, which was earlier this year. And I think in the RPG community, there certainly were a lot of people that were very vocal about it on social media. And I think and I think most of the sentiment was probably on the negative side. But I don't really see it sort of talked about much anymore. And what's kind of interesting about that is I do follow a couple of Midjourney groups on Facebook. And I think Midjourney is now, I think Stable Diffusion that actually runs Midjourney in the background, I think that's up to like version 3 or version 4 at the moment. And compared to the stuff that we saw early in its life, which was, not even 6-7 months ago now, it's basically a million times better than what it was. I mean, it has just become so good. It's kind of mind-boggling. I mean, it's able to render faces perfectly. It's able to render hands perfectly. But I think, I mean, firstly, I don't see it sort of mentioned very much, like I said before. But I think the other thing I have about it too is that I kind of think AI art doesn't interest me it doesn't interest me to use it. And I think one of the reasons why is that because, I mean, it's almost like too perfect. I mean, it's
Right.
too perfect. It's too perfect. And also too, it's just, the fact that, I also find it overwhelming in the sense that there's just sort of too much choice. The fact that you can kind of do anything, it's like, where are the parameters? Where are the parameters? Like, I mean, do you just go in this endless sort of rabbit hole of just generating like, variants of the same kind of thing? It's like, it's like where are the flaws that make a work kind of distinct and sort of give it some kind of, some kind of humanity, I suppose. And I can certainly see AI art. I can certainly see AI art being like a really useful tool in, say, doing concept art for movies, for example, right? It could be amazing for that kind of thing, like artists actually coming up with the right prompts to generate things like for, films that are loaded with special effects. But in terms of like, I have thought about it, but in terms of actually like using AI art for, say, one of my projects, it's just something that I just don't think I'd go there, because I think what I actually enjoy is I actually do enjoy, like a lot of creators, I do actually enjoy working with human beings who can bring something to the project that I sort of simply can't. And I just don't really want to sit there kind of doing, like prompts or having something which just has too much latitude and too much choice and too many kind of solutions, if that makes sense.
I think the problem is both, because I've paid for off and on subscriptions to Midjourney, but what I find is that you do have a lot of choices, but sometimes it's like it's kind of missing something. Like you don't have the full control either. Like for instance, like you have a picture, say in your background where it shows the vulture facing away. But if you want that vulture to face towards you, there's no it's maybe you could say something, but I mean, you can't easily do little tweaks to this. It's like you get what you get. You may try wording things a little differently and hope it gives you closer to what you want, but you also don't really have a lot of times the control at this moment of what it's generating like you think you would be able to.
Yeah, and look, I probably don't think that that's far off where you will be able to have that kind of control, because I think it's progressed at a staggering rate just from what I've seen, from where it was 6-7 months ago to where it is today. So I kind of think that I actually think that these things are just progressing so quickly that I would imagine you probably would be able to do that, and in the not too far distant future. I think I think artists will have a lot more control over the prompts, but again too, look, it's not a field that I've looked into with a great deal of depth, but it's something that I still like to I like to go into the Facebook group just to see what people are doing, because some of the results that they're coming up with are really quite astonishing.
Well, and I think too, if you're trying to get a certain feel, it may not always be easy to get that with the Midjourney as well. Though it seems like some people are able to get some pretty amazing things. I'm kind of like with you, and I see somebody do something amazing, and I try and do something similar. It's like not even close.
No. I mean, there are a couple of artists. There are a couple of artists that I follow on Instagram who are sort of Midjourney artists, but they've actually developed a very specific kind of Midjourney style. And I can't remember what their names are. I think one of them's called Tim Malloy. I'm hoping I'm right. But they have like 50, 60, 70,000 followers, but they are doing, you can actually tell that it's by them. It doesn't,
right.
And that's kind of interesting because they've actually developed a kind of, I suppose, an artistic style which is very identifiable. So when you actually look at it, it doesn't actually look like Midjourney art. It actually looks like art done by AI, but they've got their own kind of thing going. Now, God knows how they got that, but they've probably spent a lot of time sort of tweaking everything. But I think we'll probably start to see a lot of that kind of thing. I think we'll start to see, people, I think we'll start to see, if you like to call them artists, like artists using Midjourney, but actually getting away from that very generic kind of style, which we saw in the early days, which looked like kind of 70s fantasy art.
Yeah, which is my jam.
Yeah, but moving into this very
right.
They'll actually tweak the prompts and figure out their own kind of secret sauce, secret formula. And I have started following a couple of people like that, and I have to say that they're doing really, really interesting kinds of things, and that's I suppose good for that kind of thing,
Well, and I've seen somebody do this, and I should have copied the prompt, and I failed to. And then I thought, because I think I can do this later on, but I seen somebody do some like mock-up book covers. I'm like, oh my goodness. If you can get to that point.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's amazing. It's amazing. And look, I mean, I've dabbled in things like OpenAI, for example, which is the kind of textual version of Midjourney, which has been around for quite a while now. And I kind of wonder how long it's going to be before entire, say, what we're doing, entire RPG texts are kind of generated through artificial intelligence,
So,
and
yeah, I've used Pseudowrite.
Right.
I've used that one several times. So your experience with this, did you actually make use of any of the text?
I haven't made use of the text because, again, too, I find it really overwhelming that it's infinite, that you can just go on and just generate all this kind of material. and have all these ideas, and it's kind of, it just seems like too much to me. So I have not. But someone contacted me actually who about 7 months ago who was actually a professor of computer science at a university here in the United States, and he liked my work, and he was someone that knew a lot about OpenAI and sort of software that actually uses artificial intelligence to generate writing, and he actually did some stuff based on my work using AI, and I was just completely blown away. I mean, it was kind of better than anything I could write about, using the same kind, in one of my settings. And so he actually gave me access to an account, and I sort of dabbled in it for probably about a month, but I haven't really gone back into it for probably like 3 or 4 months. But I mean, it was amazing, but I didn't really make any use of it because I found that I was just generating tons and tons of content. And at the end of the day, I could just sit there generating like hundreds and hundreds of pages. But it's kind of like, but it just feels like too much. And I think as a writer, you just have to, I think at some point be cautious about that, because, you don't really want to swamp yourself with too many ideas and then have kind of like decision fatigue about exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And so, I actually find...
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, so what I found was I was usually using it just to fill in a spot.
Right.
And like one thing I did was I did poetry.
Oh, interesting.
And it wasn't like good poetry, but it was good, bad poetry. Like, you know what I mean? Right. Like perfect for an RPG book.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
And
yeah, look,
and there's also times where it's like I found that there's certain things I was having problems, like I needed a couple more paragraphs. And that was kind of nice in that I didn't necessarily, I'm not sure if I've ever used them fully, but I think I've used portions of them to help either or to provide direction.
Yeah, and I think what you just said about direction, I think what artificial intelligence in terms of the writing aspect of it is with things like OpenAI is that they're a great way to provide triggers and to kind of remove writer's block, if there is such a thing. They're just a great way to prompt kind of ideas. Like an image might come up like crystal spires in a black lake or something might just come up, and you think, oh, that's a good idea. I can use that because it's just something I didn't think of, and it's just something that basically takes away, like you might be in a creative fog or something, and I think the AI thing is really, really, really useful for providing prompts. Now, what's interesting is I have seen, now I can't remember the name of the magazine. It's someone we probably know who's in the OSR community, and I think he produces Delver magazine. And I did see on DT on his drive-through RPG page on I think one of the latest issue that it did say something like, that he's actually used AI to sort of generate some of the content.
They require that. There. They will shut you down if you have it on there and you do not signify that, they'll take it down.
That's right. Now I'm not sure if he referred to the art on the cover or the interior, or if it actually referred to the content, the written content. But
it's just art. I think it's all it amounts to.
Right. So okay, well maybe I'm wrong. But I think we'll probably start to see AI generated written content probably come into RPGs as well.
So it was kind of interesting when I did, because when I did Fane of the Fly God, I just kind of went into just this weird, wacky mode, and it was actually pulling out, it started pulling stuff. Sometimes you don't know what it's taking from, but then there's points where it's like, it started taking stuff, I think, from Lovecraft, and it started taking stuff from the Bible. It started taking like excerpts from the book of Job, but it was doing weird stuff with them. It's like, and it's like, it even took stuff. Eventually I would do certain things. It would take stuff I could tell is getting from bulletin boards from RPG groups. But whenever I tried to do a search to see where it was getting it from, it was mangling in it enough that I could never find where it was taken, but I knew this was IP that it was taking.
Right. Yeah. I think what's interesting about that is that I have read that that OpenAI, for example, which is where a lot of these other AI programs kind of suck their information from, because OpenAI does have an open API, that you can pay for if you've got if you've got a website like a that writes, like, say, marketing copy or something like that. You can actually license that. You can license their sort of data. Uh, OpenAI will not actually disclose where they get their information from. I mean, they obviously suck it up from everywhere,
Right.
but they actually won't. I think for IP reasons, actually say, well, this is this is the data that we've actually sort of trained on. They actually won't disclose that.
Right. But the thing is, like, when you're pulling up stuff, it's referring to, specific RPG IP. That's like, this isn't like talking about trolls and gnomes, but I can't remember what the reference was to, but very specific things to, like, D&D or Pathfinder or something. You're like, there's something weird going on here.
Well, look, I mean, the way I think about it is if it's ever been published on the internet, then they're probably training on that data. If it's actually online somewhere in a blog or whatever,
yeah,
OpenAI. I mean, it's training on that data 100%.
But it's strange. I never really thought about it. Just in these nooks and crannies, it was digging.
Mm-mm.
It's like that's pretty astounding. But then there's other times where I try to do stuff and it just repeats the same boring stuff over and over again. It's like,
yeah.
But writing copy would be nice. I think I would definitely, because I hate that for a website, or for if you could have something automatically AI just generate your Kickstarter, that'd be nice.
Oh, it'd be fantastic. I mean, it would save you, it would save you a month of work. Yeah, it would save you a month of work if you could actually. But look, I mean, these things I think can be really, really useful for things like that. Or, for example, if you wanted to write like a really catchy blurb about your book for Drive-Through RPG, like a 1-paragraph kind of summary to get people excited about it, I think by all means, like, try using these AI programs to kind of help you mold, just to mold some text to which will catch someone's attention. I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I think the other good thing to do is if you're trying to maybe quickly populate, when I say quickly, an area with maybe different groups, you can kind of use those to create. You have sufficient amount of info, but you can dump some stuff in and kind of create strong ideas for different groups or different people,
Sure,
which is kind of nice too.
Sure.
And I've kind of for at least early on for a student write, saved a lot of notes and did a lot of things, but I think in the end it was just, I think, kind of like you were saying, it just was just too much. It's a lot of stuff that I thought would be good for later on. I'm like, no, it's just like,
yeah.
And I don't know, I don't know why the furor has died down with Midjourney. Maybe it's with Twitter going on its descent. A lot of those voices that were so upset have moved on to other pastures. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, again, too. Yeah, I think the same. I haven't seen much. Yeah, I haven't seen much on social media. I think I think there were I think there was a sentiment out there that it would probably that it might take away work from artists.
Yeah, that was, I think, the people that were upset. That was, I think, the biggest part was either stealing from artists or taking money away from artists.
Yeah, I personally don't think it'll take work away from artists. I mean, not in the area that we're in. I can certainly imagine some. I can imagine some of these publishers that do the bigger, glossier kind of, very very sort of very high fantasy kinds of you know things like the pesos and the the Watsies and maybe like the Monty Cooks and stuff like that. Maybe they might, because that aesthetic kind of suits what they're doing.
Yeah.
But for example, like in what I'm doing, which is kind of which is almost like I mean, my publications have almost like a retro sort of 80s kind of aesthetic to them. I mean, the art that Midjourney does would be completely unsuitable for what I'm doing. It's completely unsuitable.
Well, and I think it also goes back to it's like somebody was getting upset, and I mentioned, I'm old enough to remember when drum machines came on the market.
Right.
We still have drummers.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of drummers.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be the same. Look, and obviously some kinds of music suits having a drum machine, like if you make a particular kind of, I don't know, like if you make kind of dance music or something, maybe it suits having a drum machine. And maybe with AI art, if you're doing a particular kind of a project, that sensibility kind of AI art would suit that. But if you do other kinds of things, then like in my case, for example, that AI kind of art would be very jarring. It would just be very discordant, sort of mixing the presentation and the layout and the writing with that kind of aesthetic. It just doesn't sort of belong together.
Well, I think the couple other things too is me trying it and me watching other people, because with Midjourney you type in your prompt, and then it's a lot of people on there. It will only take like a couple minutes for it to generate what you want. And then you either want some variation or you want to upsize it. I mean, it takes more minutes. And then each time you want to try and do something or upgrade, it takes more. It's a lot of time for each iteration.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, it's like you could just pay the artist and actually go on and do other things and come back, and in your mailbox there's a finished piece of art.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I agree. And look, to get good at, I mean, if there is such a thing, to get like good at making Midjourney art, like the two examples that I've seen that I follow on Instagram, I mean, they would have put a long time into actually going through all the trial and error. So I think just because you actually have the basic prompts, like you really have to go. It's like anything in life, you really have to go into the rabbit hole and go in really deeply to get good at anything. And to actually have something like that's made by Midjourney, which is distinctly yours, even though it's kind of sucking off, a lot of things out there and a lot of different artists, but to get something like where it's kind of fairly sort of unique, which has your own kind of stamp on it, I mean, it just requires tons of times, and it's something that I'm certainly not prepared to spend my time doing. Like I'd rather kind of write and do layout and commission an artist to actually do that, to actually do that aspect, rather than spending hours or days and days trying to get the right image.
Well, and I think the thing is, when you're paying an artist, if you think about really what are you paying for, it's ink or paint on paper, which we're only talking material costs, very small. But that's really not what, I mean, if you just distill it down, that's really what you're buying is ink on paper. But what you're really paying for is everything else besides that. It's the brains, the eye, the technique. It's not that final product, but all that stuff that it takes to get to that final product. Because it's not just a summation of just pencil marks on paper, ink marks on paper. I mean, there's a lot of other things that go into that.
Yeah, and it's also the time that an artist spends. I mean, in my publication Dungeon, it's I think I commissioned about, I can't remember how many artworks. It could have been about 10 different artworks, and all the artists put a ton of time into each one, probably by the hour, probably well above and beyond what was paid, what I paid them. Do you know what I mean? Like they actually
Yeah.
went far above and beyond and just put in an incredible amount of time into making each piece sort of really great. And and that's I'd much rather have that kind of collaboration with another person who actually bring something to it that I possibly couldn't have sort of done myself.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting at too. It's like there is also, you are also paying for a collaboration in a sense that, it's kind of interesting. What I find is like you have an initial vision, you kind of convey to some degree that artist, they kind of a lot of times will have something, they'll come back to you, and then you may make some comments, and it really turns into something that's actually, could be better than either two of you would come up individually. But there's something magical about that process where the two working together create something that wouldn't have existed before. And it's something that you on your own just dictating, man with sword stabbing dragon, isn't necessarily going to convey.
Yeah, and I actually find that collaboration thrilling. I mean, for me, it's thrilling to actually work with. I mean, it's worth every cent. Do you know what I mean? To actually work with an artist who, is just going to amplify what I'm doing, or actually give, or actually visualize what I'm doing. It's just something that every artist I've worked with so far in the publications where I've commissioned work has exceeded my expectations in every possible way. I mean, they've actually brought something to it. They've visualized, they've just visualized something, and that kind of relationship that you actually develop with an artist. I mean, to me, that's just invaluable. To me, that's kind of, I mean, I enjoy that part of it as much as I do every other part that I do. I actually look forward to the artistic collaboration, a lot. To me, that's just such an integral part of what I'm doing. Actually getting to the point where I think, well, I've got enough words, and I'm going to approach this artist to commission them to do something, because that bringing that sort of energy into a project is just, it's just thrilling for me. It's just to me, it's just such a necessary part of what I'm doing.
Yeah, and it also just did the act of, getting those files and opening up for the first time, seeing what somebody's come up with is pretty fantastic.
Well, art's evocative. People talk about the writing being evocative, but art's evocative. I mean, art is what probably brought people to RPGs in the first place when they were young. If you got into them when you were young, I mean, the thing that really captured your attention more than anything else, I mean, in my case, certainly would have been the art. And that's just something that I think it's just, that's why I would never use AI either, because, it's like, look, commissioning art for RPGs, it's not like that expensive, for example, compared to a lot of other things that you would have to commission sort of work for in other fields. I mean, so.
Well, yeah, but for point, if you don't have much money to begin with, and starting out, it becomes more difficult. Like for instance, I started out using a lot of I still use, depends on what it is, still use a lot of stock art, but I think as you build, you kind of generate a base, but if you don't have, if you're doing your early on, it can be pretty costly.
Oh no, definitely. And I think, I mean, look, I mean, there's thousands of pieces of stock art on DT RPG, for example, and a lot of it's fantastic. A lot of it's fantastic, and and it's not really that expensive. It's
No.
and there's also, I mean, look, I mean, when I did my first, three publications were all public domain art. Were all things like, we're all kind of basically old master paintings found on public domain websites, and so I don't think I commissioned my first artwork till my fourth publication.
Yeah, I for Kickstarter I did it with my first, but that was only one piece for the cover.
Yeah,
but I find myself, I'm kind of a cheapskate until I finally write that check, and then I'm okay with that level.
yeah. Well, it took yeah. Look, I mean, it took me three, and then when I actually commissioned my first my first piece of artwork, and I think the first artwork that I commissioned was actually an entire book. Like I did Nightland with an artist called Andrew Walter, where he did absolutely everything other than the map, which was done by another artist. But that was my first. But it took like 3 books before that, but using really fantastic public domain art. So there are solutions out there if you don't have. I mean, I didn't have money to commission work, and I found one. So there are solutions out there, and public domain is one. Stock art on DTRPG. I mean, I've seen great things on DTRPG which are like $2.50, $5 an image.
Right.
And so there are solutions out there for to do things that are kind of inexpensive and still get a fantastic result.
Yeah, it's interesting because in Traveler, the very first edition, I believe there was no art, and
there was no art. There was no art
because they had no money for art. But I don't have any copies that are that early. But once they had money to put art in there, they put art in there. I mean, you really, art really is a net. It's part of the thing. I mean, obviously they sold books without art, but still, it is part of the book. I mean, just I think writing, layout, and art is the holy trinity for these books or these zines or whatever that we do, and all three kind of are all very important for success.
They're very important. Yeah, they're very important. I think if you can get all three right, then you actually can have a great product.
Yeah, it's been, but yeah, the last thing I want to talk to you about was Twitter. Is there an exodus? There seems to be. Is it a mass exodus? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I joined a site which I think I was told to join by everyone on Twitter, called Mastodon.
Yeah.
And I joined. I think I joined I don't really understand how it works, but I joined a server called dice.camp or something like that, which I think a lot of the RPG people have joined. I don't haven't. I mean, I'm not even sure if there's a phone app for that. To be honest, I haven't looked into it. But I look at it once a day on my computer browser. I kind of don't really like it, to be honest. I actually do like Twitter a lot because I'm so used to it, and also I get a lot of other kind of news on Twitter as well. And from what I see is I still see a lot of people posting in both places.
Yeah,
I still see a lot of people. I mean, my hope is that this whole Twitter thing can kind of get resolved. I don't know what that even means, but I'm hoping that it kind of settles down, because I really don't want to go off Twitter because I feel that I just don't really want to start again on another social platform to build up an audience again from scratch. It just seems like I'm just not sure if I've got the bandwidth to do it kind of another time, because I've actually found Twitter to be really good for me. I really like the people that I follow on Twitter. I like the RPG community on Twitter. I just like how Twitter sort of works. I like, the retweeting. I like the commenting. I like kind of the app. I like a lot of things about it. I understand that there's, kind of issues now with the new ownership, but I'm just kind of hoping that I'm actually going to hang in there till the bitter end and not really move most of my social media content creation off, because I just, like I said, I just don't know if I've got the bandwidth to really do it all over again. It's
so
just,
going back a few months ago, I would have figured that Twitter's quote unquote demise would be, a long slouch, till it finally hits the floor. I did not expect a person to go and set everything on fire for no good reason.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still first I was like, I'm not sure what everybody's all upset about. I'm like, I really don't understand. Don't understand. I guess we can't understand. We don't have a billionaire's mind. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole thing's kind of unfortunate. I mean, what do you think of Mastodon? Have you dabbled around?
no,
You've
what
dabbled
happened
around it?
was I attempted because I just heard about Mastodon. I went to log on. I saw all these servers and I just like locked up. And then a friend of mine posted like, no, you need to get on this server. And it's like, I haven't done it because it's just like, I'm getting old. My brain's getting calcified. I'm getting set in my ways. I got my favorite chair. It's just too much work to just go through all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
mess.
I mean, I feel the same. It just and also too, you know, it's I mean, the server that I'm on, it's just RPGs. It doesn't sort of allow access to other things like other news, and I just yeah, again to it, I just yeah, look, I just hope that the Twitter issue resolves and that we get to keep it because I just don't think from what I've seen of Mastodon that I will be spending much time there.
I would say that for all the things I'm doing now, well, myself thing, for all the RPG, uh, from the podcast to getting finding freelancers and communicating with people. I would say, as far as in the RPG community, yeah, Twitter is probably one of the strongest legs of the stool by
Oh, it's the same.
far.
It's the same here. I mean, it's been you know, like I said, it's been fantastic for what I've been doing, and I'd be really sad because I actually kind of got into G plus really in the final months of G
Oh,
plus,
that's
and
sad.
it is. So I was never there for the G plus kind of thing. So I really just got into it kind of when I mean really in the final couple of months, and I never used it much, but I hear about it, and that obviously must have been a really powerful catalyst for conversations and creators and things. And I feel for me, Twitter's been the same, and to kind of I don't know, it's just I kind of hope it resolves. I'm not sure if it will. But I will just see what happens. I think.
Yeah, and I can still get kind of emotional about G plus.
Yeah,
I
a lot
think
of a lot of people are like you. A lot of people do. You know, but it was really important for a lot of people.
I think the people were angry about them shutting it down. I wasn't angry. I mean, it was a business decision. Um, and the way I looked at it was Google did a thing. They tried to do a Facebook kind of thing, and it failed. And I reaped the benefit of it for X number of years, and they shut the doors. I could get that. I just don't get the Twitter bit. That I don't understand. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to buy this mansion and then I'm going to set it on fire
yeah,
while
yeah,
doing
yeah.
lines of
I
cocaine
mean,
on the floor. And then, like,
yeah.
I don't understand what.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like things like that are probably happening, you know, in the
Yes.
background because, I mean, it just, you know, I mean, the whole thing is, yeah, you know, the whole thing is just, you know, it,
Yes.
it's just, it's just very, very unfortunate. I mean, it's very unfortunate, I think, you know. So
Yeah. And I think, probably you're right. It's either, I think the problem is we're already fairly fragmented. It's really hard to find a means for, it's not, if you're a person that just wants to talk about D&D 5e, I mean, there's plenty of places. It's very easy to find, but it just seems like for people like us who are creating stuff and are creative types, trying to interact with other people, there is really nothing else quite like this at all. That there is nothing like this.
no, there's nothing else like it. And I also think too that if more things kind of spawn off, you know, like people were talking about another platform called Hive, which people are joining as well, other than Mastodon. I mean, I've never gone on to Hive, but people were talking about Hive. I think for me, it's just I just simply don't have that time in life, you know, to actually look at Reddit, look at Facebook, look at Hive, look at Mastodon, look at Instagram, you know, look at all these kinds of things. And I felt for me is that, you know, Twitter kind of did everything, you know. You know, it was the kind of place that if any kind of interesting conversations were happening in RPGs, they would kind of find their way to Twitter, and you know you could figure out everything about what someone was doing, what you know stuff that people had coming out on Kickstarter. It kind of made its way to Twitter, and it just became a hub where if you just went on that Twitter, you could really get a great overview of exactly what was happening in the hobby. Whereas I find that now with all this fragmentation, I just think, God, you know, who's got all this time, you know, to kind of get to spend like 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there, and just it's just, you know, that's just something I just kind of don't want to do. I just don't want to do it at this point in my, you know, my age and at this point in my life now. I don't really want to sort of start again and say, well, let's just go to, you know, let's go to all these different sites and get like kind of just a bit here and a bit there and kind of be on everything. And, you know,
I think it was also good about, and these other social media sites could do the same thing, be as good. But I think for me, where Twitter is also better than, like say Facebook. I do enjoy Facebook, but I think with Twitter is to be able to discover new people is much better. Especially if you're trying to look out, like say for artists, that's a really great spot to start following people and seeing stuff.
It's great.
And then you're like, okay, I've got people in mind. And in fact, I've done that where it's like, you know, this person I want to work with someday. Nothing that I'm doing right now will work for that, but eventually there will be a project I want to do, and I want this person to do the art. And then you can follow them and send them an IM maybe, and then say, you know what, I want to work with you in a few years, and then you have them in your inbox, and then it's a very easy way to manage those contacts.
Yeah, Twitter's been great for that. I mean, Twitter's great for discovery, and for discovery for a lot of different things. And I find that the problem with Facebook is that I'm a member of, you know, some Facebook groups, you know, like OSE and OSR and the RPG Zine group. And I just find that because it's actually broken down by very specific kind of interest, I just don't think you really get that sort of discovery of other things.
No,
you know, like I don't for example, I don't play Mork Borg, but I really like the aesthetic of Mork Borg, and I kind of want to know what the Mork Borg community is doing. And I find that, you know, I want to know what a lot of communities are doing. Like I want to know what the Mothership community are doing. I want to know what the Can community are doing. And I find that with Twitter, you kind of just that all comes into the stream somehow, you know. Whereas I find that when you're in the OSE group, when you're in the Old School Essentials group in Facebook, you don't really hear anything about what the Mork Borg people are doing, or you know, unless you actually join the groups. And whereas I find Twitter was just kind of a great information kind of funnel for a lot of kinds of things, you know. And I think that that's what I'm going to miss if it kind of goes completely kaput.
Yeah,
I'm just going to miss I'm going to miss that kind of discovery, you know, of things that I have never heard about, but when I see them, I think, yes, I did want to hear about that, you know, and I'm glad it sort of came into the periphery of my vision through the Twitter stream. Whereas I just don't think that, and I think that Twitter's kind of probably the only social platform that I know that kind of that kind of does that well. It does it well because of the retweets and the fact that, you know, if someone you follow likes something, that comes into your stream. And I just think it works really well. And it's really, I'm really kind of pissed off that someone's going to screw it up. You know, it's just such a shame.
You know, it's one thing for, you know, if you buy a $20 object and you decide to throw it in the trash, that's one thing. But would spend like 44 billion to just throw it in the trash? I just like, it's inconceivable. It's just inconceivable.
Yeah, it's inconceivable. Yeah. Well, it's like boys and their toys, you know.
I guess so. But who knows? Maybe you know, maybe he'll be properly medicated one day, or somebody responsible take over, and maybe it'll get back to its slouching
Yeah,
towards
yeah,
its slow
yeah.
demise. But
Look, look, I mean, I think the best thing look, I'm certainly no expert, but I think the best thing he could do is actually just kind of step out of it and just appoint someone who's just appoint a CEO who can actually just who can actually be the face and the voice of the company, and he should just completely step back, because every time he says something and does something, I just think, God, this thing could really go under. This thing could really, really go under. That's been built up now over 15 years. It's become kind of it's kind of, it's almost like the pulse of where the world conversation is taking place about a lot of things. And I think, no, it's important that something like this exists, and he should just simply just step out of it completely and just appoint just someone who can actually take over that role and just give them full responsibility without sort of intervening in it. Just step out of it completely. I'm not sure if that would even work, but I just think that the more he's in there, and the more things he says, it's just like, oh God, it's just getting worse.
yeah, it's kind of interesting in that my son uh was talking to me, this my teenage son, and there's some sort of debate they were talking about, is a YouTube had banned this person for, I guess, supposedly, I guess this guy just makes him, the stuff he says is quite terrible, very misogynistic, type leaning, and he got shut off from Facebook. Not Facebook, but from YouTube. And he said, well, nobody knows exactly why. They're assuming because of the things that he was saying was just awful, is what a lot of people are thinking. And so some people are are upset that this is like a censorship issue. And so we kind of have this discussion. It's kind of interesting in that, YouTube and Facebook, they are private companies, and they're providing a service that they're extracting money out separately, but they are a private company. But yet also, on the other hand, they're also a means that people rely on for communication as well. And it's a strange world that they inhabit. Like, would have been inconceivable, I think. I don't know if people could comprehend this dilemma that we have as far as speech and ownership, and corporations having control over speech, and what should be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed, who decides. It's really a strange conundrum, and I don't know we've got this all figured out either.
Well, I don't think we do, because I don't think things like Twitter and YouTube have ever existed before. So there are no precedents for what these things even are.
Right.
Are they companies, or are they just the way we communicate now? I don't have the answers to that, but I feel that especially things like Twitter. Twitter is far bigger than a company. Twitter. These platforms have the power to influence, on in ways that to influence people in really deep and profound ways. That it's hard to know what they even are.
Well, it's
because
like,
I think they're certainly bigger than a private company. That's for
yeah,
sure.
right. And it's also like, it's funny how they have really become another avenue that never existed. It's like, the paper existed for a long, long time. That was pretty much it. And then radio came along, and then TV, and then, but everything was, basically information being pushed, but now with this opening up, and especially seeing what's going on with these other nations where, between Apple and various companies turning off functionality or leaving on functionality, or, certain countries making certain demands of Twitter and people being upset. And it's like, it's really a strange, it's a very strange situation we find ourselves in, and how important these, I don't want to say they're institutions, but they're almost, in a way, kind of becoming institutions.
Oh, it's wild. Yeah. I think, what was I reading today? I was reading something where, I'm not I think this is correct, where the Chinese government requested that Apple turn off their AirDrop feature during the protests that are happening now in throughout China and Shanghai,
Yeah.
because AirDrop actually allows people to communicate without an internet connection, and apparently the Chinese government actually asked Apple to turn that feature off,
So
off
the
iPhones.
if I understand, I think there's an ability to AirDrop to everybody within your transmitting area.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And that's where they could get a number of people could all of a sudden create a chain of communication.
Right. That's right. That's right. And I believe that feature was asked by the government to be switched off people's phones. I mean, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild if that's the case. I mean, what do you even call that? I mean, what is that? It's kind of it's something that's so new that these things that we've made, these communications platforms are just obviously so powerful. I just don't think we realize what they're doing to us. I mean, one thing that all these platforms have done, for example, they've diminished everyone's attention span, down to kind of 5 minutes, if that.
Right.
They've actually rewired our neural networks to kind of, they've diminished attention for sure. I mean, the fact that, one thing, one thing to look at is like, here's an example. Like, I just don't do long form reading anymore like I used to 20 years ago.
Same.
I just don't do long form reading. It's like, my attention span for reading now is probably like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And then I need to kind of go on to something else, and I think that all these communications platforms have obviously done something, have been a contributory factor to that.
Yeah, that's why we need the old school essentials way of formatting adventures, because we can no longer read the long form Gygaxian prose.
Well, look, that's it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've actually been doing a reread of a lot of the old kind of basic and advanced, all the classic kind of modules. I bought them all on Drive-Through RPG. I'm just going through all of them, like really carefully, basically to learn how to write better adventures for myself. And I think, oh my God, there's just walls and walls of text. It's just like, there's like half a page describing a dungeon room,
Yeah.
and describing all the granularity of a dungeon room. And when I actually read it, I kind of just don't know what's going on at all. I have to read it kind of a few times. And even then, when I get 3/4 of the way through it, I just get distracted somehow. Yes. And then I just get distracted. And then when I look at the kind of modern way of doing these adventures, they're like the old school way. They're, the old school essentials way. It's like a short paragraph with a couple of bullet points, and it's and the whole thing's about 5 or 6 lines of what used to take, a quarter of a page. And so that's how it's manifested in our hobby. For good, I think for the better. I think it's great, but you go back to the older way of doing it, and there's a lot there, but you have to really apply yourself if you're going to get anything out of it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, as we mentioned before, is some people enjoy modules for reading them, but rather than for running them.
Yeah.
And I just, I picked up some, not to bang on, bought some RuneQuest adventures, and I started flipping through those, and I'm just thinking, you could just cut down some paragraphs here. Just give me an outline. Like,
are these the older ones, like the Chaosium ones from kind of the 70s?
No, it was a newer one.
80s?
This one, it was actually newer ones. They actually kind of neat adventures, but it was just too many words. It's just like, just cut to the chase. I don't know how to describe it. It's like the words that they're adding, I want information. important information convey. Like if something's evocative or describing something, sure, give me a paragraph. But if it's just, basically they had this thing where this woman sings, and they want your characters to the characters to sing along with her, and if they do, they get some sort of bonus for doing that. But they, go on and explain how she can sing in such a way that demonstrates that she's a competent singer, but she's leaving an opening for people to fill in. And they go through this whole long, elaborate thing where they spend like 2 paragraphs saying, hey, this is your chances for your characters to use their musical skills. She's going to sing this thing. If they do, great, they get this. If they don't, then this. It's all they needed to do without going through this whole elaborate, discussion of musical theory and harmonies. And it's just like,
right.
Why are you doing this? It's
like, right. Well, I mean, yeah. Well, I think what did I pick up recently, which I love, but does that? That's right. I picked up a new module by Goodman Games, the Dungeon Crawl Classics, and they kind of still have that. They still have that writing style, of really long room descriptions, with kind of read aloud text and then maybe a few paragraphs describing what's going on in the room. And I think that's how they started when they released their Dungeon Crawl Classics line. I think that was back in 2012 or 11, and they still do that. So I think that definitely has a big audience, because there are a lot of DCC fans, and I was a huge DCC player for about 5 or 6 years. But I think when you actually compare it now to this new kind of writing, this kind of which I think which I wouldn't say that Gavin Norman pioneered it, but he did have a big kind, with his old, with things like Winter's Daughter, Hole in the Oak, with these early modules, this idea of, like a, bracketed text and bold and bullet points and stuff like that. That's, I think a lot of creators are still trying to find the perfect solution to that, because James Raji made, from Lamentations of the Flame Princess, he made a very interesting post, I think last year, in the LOTFP Facebook group. He was actually talking about that. He was actually talking about, why he likes doing such long sort of descriptions in his books of, like room descriptions, for example, right. And why he doesn't go down the path of kind of minimalism, which a lot of, more contemporary things are going down, like OSE, Morkborg, Mothership, for example. And people actually ask them, they say, well, why don't you go down this path? Why do your modules have, why do your adventures have so much kind of prose in there? And he said, well, because there's a whole audience out there that just reads and doesn't play.
Yeah.
He said there's a whole audience of people there that buy RPG books. They still call themselves gamers, but they actually just buy it to read as kind of metafiction. And that's kind of warranted, I think, because there are people out there that do. I mean, I buy tons and tons of RPG books, but I probably played about not even 1% of them, because I only have like 2 gaming groups. I don't play very often. I just don't have the time. I love to play them all, but I still enjoy, actually, like with DCC. I mean, I haven't played DCC for a few years now, but I still buy all the books because I actually really, really enjoy reading them as kind of fiction. And I think that's kind, that to me is a very,
yeah.
I mean, there's a, so yeah, I think there are different strands, so.
But see, like I read through like Death Frost Doom, and that was very wordy, but that was actually fairly interesting. So I don't know why I found that interesting, but I think the difference is like with Death Frost Doom, all that extra text helped really fix in my mind the creepiness of the whole thing.
Mm-mm.
Where I think the other one was just, it was just over elaborating on something that didn't need to be be elaborated.
Sure.
One.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that line is. Where the alarm bell should go off somewhere. I don't know where that is.
Right, right.
And but yeah, it's kind of interesting because I think I'm not necessarily consistent, but it seems like I think maybe the difference is maybe some do kind of have, I don't want to say reads like a novel, but there probably are some styles of writing that people are able to do that actually mimics more of the typical like story rather than just being a textbook that's been expanded out.
Sure,
And that
sure,
probably takes a
sure.
special talent to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, indeed. Yeah, yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, it's one thing that I'm always searching for, which is, what's the best way to describe interactive elements and adventures that are both usable and engaging, and I don't know the answer to that because I think it's an ongoing process, but I'm always looking at kind of what everyone's doing to try and sort of what's the best way to lay these things out in the most economical and articulate and evocative way and the most elegant way possible.
Well,
So
I think
so
with Dungeon, you definitely are, if I recall correctly, you definitely pare things down quite a bit as far as like, I think trying to find like, because I've tried, I think when I try, I still don't do enough. It's like,
yeah, I mean, I think with Dungeon it was just purely out of necessity because I think there were 8 to 10 runes on each page, and the parameters were that it all had to fit on one page because otherwise, so there were limitations, and in hindsight, I don't think that that's an ideal way to write, right? Because I think what you're actually doing is you're basically stripping as many words back as you can because I'm actually writing on the layout. So I'm stripping everything back to fit one floor per page because it wouldn't make sense for it to go over 2 pages because then it just wouldn't just, it's just not what the zine is. But I can see the drawbacks of that 100%, and it's just really not the ideal way to do it. But having said that, it serves a purpose in that zine, and it's a great exercise in terms of how a writer can work within strict limitations in terms of what it's forcing you to do. But it's certainly not sort of ideal because for a number of reasons. But I still think it's good to work with some kind of parameter.
well, no, I think you're right because I think because you did the discipline, you went through it, and you came away with a certain understanding. You may not want to do that way again, but I'm sure that will serve you later on, and you're probably going to look at things a little differently now. It's kind of like that whole Hegelian what thesis, antithesis, and synthesis.
Right,
Is that
right.
so? I imagine that's that kind of thing where you kind of do a thing, and then you end up doing something kind of in between. I mean, as long as you keep pushing yourself in certain directions, I think you kind of find a constant state of synthesis and trying to achieve that perfection, whatever that means.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, no, it's an ongoing thing, and I try and sort of I mean, it would be nice to have AI do that for me if possible. I don't think it can, but you know,
Yeah,
but
or just be a billionaire and just pay people to do it.
just pay people to do it. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, but I think I think the next I think what I'm trying to do with the next issue of Dungeon is still keep that parameter of one level per page, but I'm going to try and sort of do it in a much more sort of conversational kind of style, as opposed to this kind of OSE style, which Dungeon was, which was the bolded words and the brackets and the flavor elements, and then the nested sort of bullet points and stuff like that. I'm going to see if I can actually do the entire thing in something that's like slightly more conversational, kind of descriptive, but slightly more conversational without the kind of without the kind of hard breaks between the sentences and things like that. Just I'm going to try a slightly different approach because I wasn't 100% satisfied with how that was written.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's just but definitely you've got an infinite number of levels to add to this, so you have plenty of time to experiment.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm going to see how many I can do. I think. I mean, I know I've got enough content for at least three. Like I've written kind of three of them already. Like I've got the content kind of done. Like I mean, but actually designing it takes much longer than writing it and then editing it all. But I'll see if I can get to like I'll see if the interest is there. If I can get it to four, that would be great. That would be great. I mean, if I can get three, that would be great. But if I can get it to four, that would be like quite an achievement.
So I
I
don't
think
have the chops to do it like you do, but one thing I thought about with your idea here was doing the expedition to Barrier Peaks, but in your dungeon style, where each level would be a spaceship level and have a theme.
yeah.
Huh?
Well, I love that adventure. I mean, I just love that adventure. That adventure is fantastic. I mean,
Yeah, and you
that's
could.
kind of. I mean that was like kind of the inspiration behind Dungeon, this expedition to the Barrier Peak.
Oh, that's funny.
I mean,
So,
I mean, it, I mean, it was that, and it was, it was other things like Anomalous Subsurface Environment and Stonehill by Michael Curtis, and Mike's Dungeons by Jeff McKinney. I think's really fantastic. But Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is probably my favorite. It's probably my favorite adventure of all time. So
so
it's not. I don't think it's the best adventure that TSR ever did. But what's kind of really interesting is that it is that Gary Gygax in the early days always thought that D&D was a science fantasy game.
right. Yeah,
Do you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like he always thought that. I mean, I think even Blackmore Dungeon has like robots in it, and that was from kind of 19. That was from 75, 76. So Gygax always envisioned D&D to be science fantasy, and I think that Expedition to the Barrier Peaks kind of encapsulates that kind of vision.
Well, I think it was probably the most. This is me reading too much into it, but I also think it actually seemed like he had fun doing it.
Oh, it's fantastic, fantastic. I mean,
Yeah,
I think he loved every minute of writing that.
but my thought was you could do the different levels and then but do it in such a way like you have openings to different levels and keep those slots the same, but you could play the dungeon any way you want. You could stack them however you want. They'd all, no matter how you put them together, would fit up.
That's a good idea. I think you'd probably need some kind of elevator tube or something like
Right.
going through the entire thing, so you can actually get from like what level 12 down to level 20, kind of in, you
And
know.
some of those tubes may be blocked at certain levels, and you have to walk across or whatever it may be.
Well, I might have to actually incorporate that idea into the next one, because I didn't think of doing. Now that we talked about Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, I didn't think of including tubes, so I might have to. I might have to do that and credit you for it, Jeff,
You don't have to credit me.
for the
Credit
idea,
Gary.
because no, because I think that's actually a good idea. But no, but that's a fantastic adventure. I've actually been having a blast reading all the TSR adventures again, like, because I'm sort of going through them. I'm doing deep readings of them, kind of with adult eyes and with having written a few things and actually going back and I think what really I'm reading Castle Amber at the moment, which I think is just fantastic. It's just a fantastic adventure. I think that was done for BX. I think Tom Mulvey wrote that. I think what actually staggers me the most about TSR adventures, the great ones. The staggering thing for me is just how much they were able to actually put in 26 to 32 pages.
Right.
Just how much content they were actually able to kind of cram in there, like 28 to 32 pages. Sorry, there is just so much content in these TSR adventures. It's just it's kind of bewildering, as to how much stuff they actually, they actually put in there. Like amazing, where you could actually, I'm not sure how long I'm going to run Castle Amber soon, but I don't know how long it's going to take. But from reading it, there's kind of probably like 10 to 15 sessions in a 32-page adventure. I mean, it's really, really staggering. Because a lot of things written today, some of them like DCC, for example, that they're actually convention games. They're kind of meant to be running 4 hours. That's part of the big popularity. They're kind of one shots. And a lot of adventures that we buy today are probably meant to be run anywhere between 1 to 3 sessions. But these TSR adventures are kind of just staggering in terms of the density. It's really, really amazing. Like I never thought of that until going back to reread them over the last few months. I thought, wow, this is just so impressive.
If you were really to run Expedition to Barrier Peaks and flesh it out, because it's not fleshed out in its entirety. I mean, you could spend. You're right. You could spend forever in that place.
You could spend a year. You could spend a year with a gaming group in there.
Yeah,
you could easily spend a year. And it isn't fleshed out, because I've been reading the I got that Goodman Games Expedition to the Barrier Peaks kind of the one that they've done for 5e.
Yeah,
it's one of their, I think it's called like TSR Revisited, where they actually do a 5e. I don't play 5e, but I got it anyway because I actually add a lot of content and kind of flesh things right out. And that's kind of, I think that's about 300 pages all up or so. And that you could easily play for a year, no problem.
So reading through, what do you think are the top ones or your choices for the top TSR modules?
What are the top ones? What are the top ones? Well, I mean, I think Castle Amber, which I've been reading now, is fantastic. I think Isle of Dread is fantastic. The Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, The Lost City, Queen of the Demon Web Pits. What else is great? The Assassin's Knot. I mean, one of the great ones is the Against the Giant series, which is G1 to G4.
The problem with some of the ones, I think, like Queen of the Demon Web Pits, is it's more difficult, I think, to run than some of the other ones.
Right.
And
why do you think that?
Well, at least like the Vault of the Drow, or is it Drow and the Hidden Shrine, the Koato. It's like they got a lot of like traveling and really neat stuff without really good ways of showing how to actually do it in an interesting way. It's like they got all these things are possibly great, but without really giving tools and how to do it.
Right. I just don't think they thought about things like that back then.
Oh, they didn't.
I don't think they thought about things like that back then.
I think the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, I think, is probably my top favorite. Because if you just do a little bit of tweaking, because I played it in such a way that it just works really well. I mean, the whole scary scene, I think I got rid of a few things and added a few things, but in general, you can play with different games as different people, and it is a mystery. If you play it like a mystery, it works out really, really great.
Yeah, I also like sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I also like it's a very sort of basic one, but I also really like Into the Unknown. I think that's just a great kind of introductory dungeon. I mean, it's a classic. That's just fantastic.
I don't think we've ever played that one. I'm trying to think.
Yeah. It's got a great cover. I think it's got a fantastic painted Dave Sutherland cover. But that's just a fantastic kind of introductory kind of dungeon, which actually it's actually very interesting because it actually whilst you're reading it, it tells you how to actually run it whilst you're actually reading it. It's like I mean that's just fantastic. That's really great. I mean, so if you ever want to take a party in there on a Saturday night just to kind of kill some goblins, that's the one that you need.
I think the Keep on the Borderlands is pretty much a seminal classic, but I think what's kind of amazing to me is that each of those individual caves dungeons were pretty short, but they actually were pretty evocative. It's just weird that they're all
I
scrunched
haven't
together.
I haven't read that one yet. I've got it on my to do, and I know that it's good. And I read it years ago, but I haven't actually gone into it in depth. But I will do that hopefully, sort of over Christmas.
And
That's kind of one of the ones on my hit list.
I ran the Sinister Secret of Salt Mart, not Sinister Secret, the Cult of the Reptile God as modern horror. Well, modern. It was set in the 30s, and I didn't have to change much and put it in a town in Arkansas, and it ran fine.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I also like the Lost City.
So I've looked through it. I've never ran it.
Yeah,
and it's got a lot of, because you've got the different. It was there two different factions involved in that.
That's right.
It's taken off of like what Conan's Red Nails.
I think so. Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of like basically traveling through the desert, and there's a kind of, there's an entryway, and the party goes in there and sort of climbs down, and there's all kinds of things inside. But that's a really good adventure as well. Another kind of classic.
I just wonder, and the thing that worries me about those is, and I've never tried running it, is, I think the big thing about it is the factions and playing the factions. I just don't know how well it sets it up for doing that.
Right.
That's my fear of getting partway in. And it's like, now what do I do?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the amazing thing is that a lot of the people that were writing those things were probably in their early 20s, when they were doing all that kind of stuff too. That's who kind of were kind of making these things up as they were going along, in terms of just in terms of things like how to run these, how to play factions. I just don't know how much thought there was in all the minutiae of of what we think of now, when writing adventures. I think back then it was just kind of like they were just kind of doing it, man.
Yeah, and it is fascinating, because both the time pressures to get things done, the relative youth of it, because you're right, because it seemed very obvious what was right and what was wrong, but later on they found out a lot of those ideas weren't right. Or, I mean, make the whole idea with, originally I think Gary Gygax didn't think adventures were going to be a big seller. Nobody wanted those, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, Judges Guild's making bank off of this. We need to get on some of this action.
Yeah, and I think they just had a handshake agreement about that, didn't they? I don't think they even got royalties, because they just didn't. They thought the idea was going to be just a non-starter. So I don't
knock yourself out, boys. Then they heard the cash register ringing all the way from Decatur, Illinois. It's like,
yeah. And then I think, and then didn't TSR get really upset about anyone that put compatible with AD&D on their merchandise?
Oh yeah, no. Well, even with 5e, it was interesting how afraid people were to make 5e third-party product, and if they were going to get sued or not. And I can't remember who the first company was that put out a bestiary, and everybody, including like Wolfgang Bauer, were like watching, like, the lawyer's going to descend. And because they weren't very clear, they weren't speaking as far as what they wouldn't do. And then the wrath of TSR did not descend upon them. And then I think Wolfgang Bauer and a few others started publishing some stuff, like, see how that was going to go. And then once they realized, as long as
is Wolfgang Bauer Kobold Press?
He is, yeah.
That's him, right, yeah. I did see something online. Now I don't know if this is correct. I'm not sure if you saw it, that for this kind of future iteration of D&D, which is what's it called, 1D&D, that they weren't going to have an open gaming license or an SRD for that. They weren't planning to.
Yeah, that's where there's been a lot of talk about that, and I'm not I enjoy listening. I'm not really concerned about fifth edition or what's going to be after, but I sure do enjoy. I sure do enjoy listening to people talk about it. But yeah, it does seem pretty open. I mean, obviously, people can always make content with the SR with the OGL and with the SRD that already exists, but the way they present information, it can make it a little more difficult. But I think the biggest concern is that, or at least one group concern was that if they put everything electronically, it may kill the need for books. And if you're getting already all your books, like they said with 4E, it was the same way. Is that pretty soon everybody's using the character builder, and that was in the software, and we're getting their stuff electronically. So even if people were to try and make something, which it wasn't SRD, they call it something else for 4E, it was so onerous that there was no incentive to do it. So if 5E, if they make it in such a way that it's you can still make stuff for it, but it's all going to be electronic and it's going to be on their platform.
Right.
Your audience is already locked into that garden.
Right. Well, I'm sure they know what they're doing in terms of wanting to make a profit. You know, I'm sure they know exactly what they're doing. They probably have so much kind of data on their customers that I just think that whatever they're going into, it sounds like they'll probably be quite successful at it. I mean, who knows? But I look forward with bated breath to see how that entire saga unfolds.
Yeah, and I think, and like it was mentioned by Morris from Ian World, as far as the SR or the open gaming license, there's no taking that back.
Right.
But obviously there's certain things that IP products and things like that, and the SRD does make it much easier to make use of material and make it flow without the extra work, without having to rewrite everything. But you're right. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But no matter what, we've got what we got. They're not going to take away Old School Essentials or Adventure Conqueror King or Swords and Wizardry or whatever it may be. It's all pretty well. It's already it's irrevocable. So
yeah.
Well, I think we're hitting the time-space continuum, Vasili. It's
all right, Jeff.
I thought, well, maybe we'll get an hour's worth of talking about Twitter and Midjourney, but I think we got a little more than that.
Yeah, it was great to chat again.
And well, looking forward to February. We'll I think I might have Gary's Appendix 2 out for there.
Oh, nice.
So
we'll see. I hope so. I haven't seen anything mentioned yet about Kickstarter, or what do they call it, Zine Quest next year, but hopefully in the next 6 weeks or by New Year we'll have some firm dates.
They have never. I'm trying to think. So I think they've never ever mentioned it that early. I think it's usually they might do better this time because they really botched this last one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I just hope that I think February is kind of a much better time rather than sort of summer, rather than August. I did actually count, I think, and I can't remember what it was. I think Ian Newsom did a good breakdown of this on he's the guy behind one of the big mothership Kickstarter successes called Hull Breach, but he actually did a breakdown of all this about the amount of projects that happened in August of last year during Zine Quest versus February. And I think there were 3 times as many projects in February as there were in August. So I think in August there were just under 150. And I think in February there are about 450.
What's strange is there's 2 things going on. One was it was communicated, people had more time to get a zine ready for this last one, but a lot of people were put off by it. There's a lot of people who were very upset.
I just don't think it's a great time of year. I just don't think that time of. I think yeah. Look, I mean, I think February has worked well for quite a few years, and they should probably just stick to it.
Yeah, and we'll see how it goes. So one way or the other.
Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time, Vasili, take care.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care. Nice seeing you again.
Well, thanks for coming on. I've been wanting to have you on again for a while.
I appreciate that. That's very nice of you. So yeah, you've got a lot of books back there in your library.
Yeah, we did homeschooling, and now we're getting out of those, and now it's time to sell things off and consolidate.
Oh, nice. How old are your kids?
Well, the youngest one is 16 and a half.
Right. Have you always homeschooled them?
Yeah, it had varied. So a lot we homeschooled. So like the oldest we homeschooled, but the last couple of years he mainly went to junior college.
Right.
And then we had two kids that were part-time high school. Then we had another child that was full-time high school. And then Jack's been homeschooled, but there's also part of a co-op where they do like logic, Latin / Spanish, and a few other things they do as a group.
How many when you're actually homeschooling a child, how many hours a day are you spending with them?
It's probably I think my wife, it's probably, I imagine 5 or 6 hours.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's I mean, some stuff they're doing on their own, and like with now, as they get older, it's less so. But yeah, it's probably
amazing.
Well, especially we had quite a few kids going at the same time. But now it's just one. It's a little bit less strenuous.
Right. Wow, incredible! Wow, amazing.
Yeah. So now it's just we're hitting the next phase in our life, so it's just a matter of trying to simplify and cut stuff back, get rid of stuff, and
yeah. Well, it's nice to get rid of things,
It is. But I've also been growing my game collection, so now I'm going the other direction with that. But as long as I'm selling books and making room for them, we're okay.
Yeah. That sounds good. All right, I'm gonna probably hit the shower now and try and read a bit in bed before I pass out.
Well, you're talking about reading. It's like I started thinking today myself, is like I have not been reading much. I just need to start setting a time every day and just say, you know what, 9 o'clock on, I'm just going to read.
Yeah. I've actually found it kind of useful because after I finished Dungeon, I kind of burnt out. I didn't really do anything for about 3 months, any writing. I just couldn't. I just kind of basically felt creatively kind of frazzled, and because I tend to work on things kind of concurrently. I tend to work on 3 or 4 things concurrently, and I went through a kind of a very intense kind of year writing as much as I could, in all my free time, and after I did that fulfillment, I just fucking burnt out. I just I couldn't do anything. I would sit there and I actually did not want to write. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I would sit behind the computer and nothing was happening. And that's why I actually got into reading again, because I just didn't really have the impulse to do anything else. Like I thought, well, reading can be work in the sense that I have to feel good about not working and just absorbing for a while, which is what I've been doing. And I've only actually been getting back into the writing in the last few weeks, after really like a 3 or 4 month break, because I just kind of burnt out. Yeah, just so I was just doing it too much, I think, all the time.
Yeah, I would reach burnout. I think it just all my time is doing other things, and it's like I think the reading helps fill the reservoir back up as far as inspiration ideas.
That's exactly how I'm looking at it, because I've learned a lot, through going, and I'm sort of reading slowly and I'm taking notes, and I switch my phone off when I read and try not to get distracted. But I've actually found going back and reading, good things, that are recommended, or that, you see reviewed and you think, I should read this, and actually give it kind of time and focus. I found that is actually building up the reservoir. And I think what I've also found too is I've always found it really difficult to get inspiration from novels. Like I read some novels, but I'm not like a great fiction reader. Like I actually do enjoy reading RPGs for inspiration. But every time I try and read like all the things that I should be reading for inspiration, like all the appendix N, and
right,
the Jack Vance, which I've read, and things like the Lovecraft, which I like, and the Clark Ashton Smith, which I like. But when I go back into that, I just think, no, it's just I just don't get that much out of it. I get more out of watching films, like watching like horror films and things. I've been watching all the Hellraiser movies
oh
again
yeah,
lately, which I really like for inspiration. But I actually think that the thing that inspires me the most is actually reading other people's RPG work. I
yeah.
just really connect to it. I really enjoy reading. Like I've been reading, what I've been reading lately, I bought Wyvern Songs by Brad Kerr, who's just a very, very good writer. He's a very good writer, Brad Kerr. He released an anthology, uh, and I've just really been enjoying that. I've just really been enjoying like his work, yeah, and I'm also uh, Necrotic Gnome are releasing an adventure anthology next year, which was part of their Kickstarter. And Brad has one of the adventures in that, along with I think Dan Wilson, who does Planar Compass, and
Yeah, they just
Glyn
released
Seal.
it. I didn't read it, but there's a PDF that got released. Yeah, Dan and Sarah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I did the graphic design for that, so I'm doing the graphic design for that book next year.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw
so
your name on
yeah,
something
yeah.
else from Necrotic Gnome. Was it Carcass
Dolmenwood.
Magazine?
I'm doing the art direction for them as well now. So it's really good. It's kind of like paid RPG work. Can you believe it?
I
It's
know it.
actually it's like it's like oh. But no, it's been good. So I'm doing that for Necrotic Gnome. So doing their art direction. So so what that means, it means like reading the articles and actually giving a brief to the artists of what image should appear in the blank spaces. So that's been interesting work.
Well, for the Journey of the Madlands, my latest one, I'm actually, you know, I'm getting the rough writing done, putting in layout, actually finding spots to put pictures. And like this is the first time I ever have done that. And it's like I even just went to the internet and just snagged some pictures, and I'll give them to an artist, say something like this. But I'm actually like first time actually acting like a responsible person and telling a person with art what I really want, rather than just saying, just give me some stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's a very interesting process, art direction. I kind of do that. I sometimes just come up with like inspiration images as well, where I can't remember what it was. I think it was for Carcass Crawl. I think it was a character class. It was for what was it for? I think it was for one of the classes that Gavin wrote. I can't remember what it was, but I think I gave the artist, like maybe Stefan Pogue, I sort of collected all these things from the internet and said, this is what the character class would kind of look like. And, and then, but then he brings his interpretation onto it, and that's kind of interesting too. And I think what you find with artists too is like with someone like Stefan, who I've used for my stuff in the past. I mean, that guy's just a fucking pro. That guy, he's just
Yeah.
he's a fucking pro, and he's so quick. He's so quick, and he's just so kind of good at what he's doing that like it's like, yeah, that's perfect. It's kind of like whatever he comes up with, it's like, yes, that's exactly he's just really really good. But I think the necrotic gnome artists are very good. And I think what's been good about that is that Gavin had his artists, but I've managed to bring a couple more some that I actually found on Twitter. Like some I actually found on Twitter. And kind of write to them and see what their schedule's like, and see how much they are and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I think working with artists is good, but then there's the other problem with working with good artists is that good artists are just never available. They've just got too much work on. There was a couple of artists that I saw on, like someone like David Hoskins, for example, is a very, very good artist, who's done a lot of stuff for Mothership, amongst other things. He's had a lot of stuff published in the OSC books, but he's just got so much work on. Like Exalted Funeral give him so much work with all their Kickstarters and stuff that there's just no way he can kind of do anything. So it's a double-edged sword working with artists, because you might have someone in your heart's desire of who you want to use, but they're just simply not available. And that's actually happened a number of times, because they just because they can't kind of pump these things out. You know what I mean? So
or they've got a schedule.
They've got a schedule, and they simply just can't sort of.
It's like manufacturing.
They simply can't. They can't kind of do it on. They can't just kind of click their fingers. It's like.
Right.
It's like I might, they say, well, I've got work now taking me till next spring, and maybe I can fit something in February, March. I mean, that's kind of the lead time with some people, and so it's but working with artists is great. It's very rewarding, and if they're really good, it's just more rewarding, because if they can kind of bring a visualization to your writing that really gets you excited about your own work.
Yeah, there's a very interesting there's a book called Mind of the Maker by Dorothy Sayers, and she used the Christian view of the Trinity to explain artistic process. And then she used like theological heresies to explain where it goes wrong. It's very interesting as far as like the motivation, the idea kind of being made present, and then also the effect that your work has on other people, bringing energy back in. It's really just kind of interesting how that whole it is kind of like almost like a mystical process with ideas and creations, inspiring people that, creates energy that inspires other people or inspires you back. And it is a very, it is pretty incredible. I agree.
Yeah. No, it's very, very rewarding. That's why I couldn't imagine Gavin saying, Vasili, go to Midjourney and just generate one of those. Just generate a Dragonborn on Midjourney, please.
Yeah, exactly.
The carcass crawler. So no, I think artists are here to stay, and I mean, my sort of background is that I'm not sure if I told you this, but one of the reasons why I enjoy working with artists so much is that I was an art dealer in Australia for 15 years. So I had my own galleries in Australia where I worked with contemporary art.
That's fun.
So I did that for a living for a lot my adult life basically, and I worked with I think I did about 300 exhibitions over a 15-year period. So
that's got to be stressful.
Well, not really. I had good staff to do it, to work with me, but I worked with a lot of artists, kind of managing a lot of artists, and I had galleries in 2 cities in Australia, so it was just an ongoing kind of treadmill of working with artists to realize exhibitions, and that was kind of very rewarding. So to be able to kind of dabble in it, and when I moved to New York, I kind of gave up that life, because I obviously couldn't bring my business here. So I still work in it, but not in a direct way. But I think working with RPGs again has kind of reignited that passion of working with people, because now I just commission artists to
Right.
make kind of small illustrations, but I still enjoy that relationship and that interaction with artists. You know, I enjoy that relationship and that communication, and I kind of you know, and I really enjoy working with people who I think are very talented, kind of you know, above and beyond what I ever could be, you know. Even though sometimes I would like to be that person as well, but they can kind of do it in such a way by orders of magnitude better than I ever could, you know. And
Right.
you know, and that's just something I kind of get satisfaction, a lot of satisfaction with, you know, like especially when they're good, you know, when you work with good artists like Stefan, for example, like Stefan Poker, I just rate as, and Andrew Walter, who I've worked with, just very good art. And you know, a lot of the artists that did stuff for Dungeon, like the cover, like Chris Malik, and you know, just they're nice human beings, you know, and they're good artists that kind of really love what they're doing, you know, and they would kind of do it for, irrespective if I commission them or not, you know, they, because it's just what they enjoy doing in life, you know, and it's like their hobby, you know, and I, you know, I think there's just something to be said for that kind of genre of art making, you know, fantasy art, and it's just something I really have great admiration. I think it's what got me into games when I was young, and it's amazing to be able to, like, I'm 50 now, you know, but to actually like be able to write and reach out to these artists and have someone illustrate a piece of writing and kind of bring the writing to life, you know, because
What?
they can kind
Right.
of they can kind of do it justice, and it's kind of an amazing thing. Like I never thought I'd be doing this when I first started playing D&D.
Yeah, and I think the idea of producing a thing, like actually having a book in the wild, is kind of, it is kind of perplexed. I mean, I do kind of find myself sometimes still surprised. You know, like I'm making books and people are buying them. Like I don't understand. It's like,
It's amazing, you know. It's amazing because look, I mean, I've suffered imposter syndrome my entire life, you know. So to actually put stuff out there and actually have people respond, it's really quite sort of humbling, you know.
right, exactly. Like, because in the end, it's just nonsense. It's just like, what is this really, and how's it change people's lives? But yet, it's just still part of that whole whatever it is that we're part of. It's just
Yeah, and I think the other interesting thing is that, you know, what we're doing has such a, I mean, has such a tiny audience in the
right.
world. I mean, I don't know how many people. I mean, it's just such a tiny audience. But the fact that technology allows us to connect and find each other, that's kind of amazing, because I don't, you know, you wouldn't have been able to do that 30 years ago. Like the fact you might have been able to do it at conventions, but the fact that you can actually like just connect with people that share your interest, you know, it's kind of like it's pretty amazing. Because here's a way to think about it: like if you sell 1,000 books of what you're doing, you're technically selling 20 books to everyone in each state.
Right.
So in each state of America, there are 20 individuals in each state who,
Yeah.
and that's really not that many, right?
No.
But having said that, you know, we you know, we know where these people kind of stand around the drinking fountain, you know, in terms of we know where they are, you know, and that's kind of one of the great things that sort of technology has done. You know, it's allowed, you know, someone like you and me to have this interest, you know, and actually like connect with people and share that, rather than kind of just be on your own kind of
Well,
doing
and
it.
the thing that's it's international because my kids were kind of astounded. I'm sending books to New Zealand, Poland,
Ah, it's
Finland.
amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, like, and sometimes
It's
I'm looking. It's
amazing.
like I assume these people are. I mean, obviously English speaking, but it's like, wow, we're getting into some names and some countries. It's like, it's astounding that somebody in Poland's.
Found you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
It's
like
like,
it's like they found you. You know, it's like thank God for, you know, for social media and Kickstarter. Like they actually found you. You know, and
yeah,
that's kind of, I mean, that's why. But you know, I think it's good to have an audience, and I think for me, it's like the fact that you can even just get a tiny bit of response from something. It's something it's enough to compel you to keep on going.
Well, because I was also big into photography for quite a while.
Yeah, you're a photographer. Like,
well,
was that your background? Because I think
I
you've
did
talked
freelance.
about it before. Oh,
so
you
I did
freelance.
Well, basically, I did it on the side. So I did some fine art photography, quote unquote fine art photography, for a number of years. Just did okay, and then I got a gig doing photographing for a major gun magazine. I did would do like product photography and on-site photography for about 8 years or so.
Right.
Which was pretty fun. It was pretty interesting. I got to see a lot of neat things, but so yeah, but I didn't do it. None of that I didn't do any of that full time.
Right. Where were you showing your photography? Were you showing it in galleries or kind of selling it, or?
I was trying to sell it mainly locally.
Right.
I tried doing some in a museum, and also I did stuff at like the like farmers markets and some local art shows. What I realized is that I had a lot of people comment. I had a lot of people but I think for this area, the problem I faced was I think the people buying art is mainly women that are actually buying it, and they're buying it for decor.
Right. Yeah.
So,
a lot of people still buy art for that.
Yeah,
I think that's okay. I think that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, but I mean that for the most part, when they're going through the art shows, at least around these areas, it's usually women in their 40s or 50s. They're looking for something to hang over their couch.
I see. Right.
Where if you're in New York, you're probably getting a different. You're getting a different clientele.
It's a different kind of an audience here. Yeah.
I'm in the Midwest, so it's a little different situation.
Yeah.
And my friend will say about that. So I did the photography. Oh well, it's gone.
Right.
Oh, I know. But I think the problem was, and there's some stuff I really enjoyed. I just loved is there are homes around this area that I would find things that were just off.
Right.
And I loved where it would like it's missing a front porch or whatever it may be. There's just something off about it, and I enjoyed doing those. But then people don't like having their homes photographed, and they're suspicious of men walking around the street taking pictures of their home.
Right.
But I think I never enjoyed a whole lot of success as far as that goes. So I think for me, the small amount of success I've had with the zines actually motivates me to keep doing that.
Right. Yeah, I've made art in the past, but not with much success. But I think the making zines has probably been, the most satisfying creative endeavor.
Yeah,
I've undertaken. I used to make a lot of collages. I had an exhibition here in New York once when I first moved here in a good gallery. But I found that I find that kind of working behind a computer and not getting dirty is something I really enjoy doing. That or taking my notebook to Starbucks and putting my noiseless headphones on and kind of writing is just something I get a lot more satisfaction out of any other creative endeavor I've kind of ever pursued. Even though writing is very difficult, I find it very difficult. I find it very time consuming, and I find that I don't have the immediacy that I used to have with art making, where art was very immediate. Art was very something that I could make or work, and there it was. Whereas writing is just something that takes an incredibly long time, and it's just slow without seeing much kind of happening ever. And it's a lot of perfecting things, and it's a lot of you have to make sure that all the I's dotted and the T's are crossed. It's like architecture. Whereas I found that making art was just very immediate. I could work on a day or two and have a piece and look at it in the morning and get a great feeling of satisfaction. I don't get that same satisfaction, but I find it more satisfying overall to make a book. Whereas I do miss that immediacy of having a sense that I've finished something. Whereas when I finish things with books, it's kind of far and few in between. I happen to be working on a lot of things at the same time.
But the problem is, once you finish the book, you're not finished with it because you gotta get it shipped.
Oh, everything. Yeah, it's never ending. It's never ending. It's never ending. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, that I enjoyed one thing I really enjoyed about photography is I love going to old towns, and I absolutely love finding these old downtowns in these like very small Midwest towns where things are dilapidated, and shooting behind businesses.
Right.
The conduit, it's just weirdness. I found there would be chairs, like people would like apparently be eating their lunches or doing different things out there, and there'd be chairs sitting out behind these old buildings, or like over 100 years old, and I just enjoyed whatever that was, and walking around and trying to discover, which was fun. But
right.
But the writing is just definitely it's a slog.
Yeah. It's satisfying, but it's very it's definitely incredibly difficult, and it's I found it difficult when it wasn't firing for 3 months. You know what I mean? Like it was just a real challenge. It was a real challenge to kind of just not lose all kind of faith in or hope. When it was just not, when I just couldn't sort of. Ugh. So I haven't experienced that for a while, but it was just but still it's a good community, and the fact that it's collaborative is something that's super enjoyable. The fact that you can actually work with artists, it's for me that's kind of the highlight, I think, for me.
Yeah that's kind of interesting, because what you're bringing up is really, I think the thing is because you and I we're not doing a single thing, we're doing it all.
Doing it all, yeah. Doing everything, yeah.
So there's got to be certain aspects that have to be enjoyable, because not all of it is. And so for you, it's the art, seeing what's going to come from the art and dealing with the artist. So the idea is you're kind of creating a thing and seeing what sort of magic is going to be wrought by the artist is what is the real magic for the project.
I think that is for me, because I actually don't enjoy the writing very much. I enjoy the layout, but I don't enjoy doing the writing very much at all, and I enjoy the art. But the thing is, like, I slog through the writing, even though, I do enjoy it. I do enjoy sort of developing it, but refining it, I don't enjoy the last. I don't enjoy the last 10%, which takes as much as the first 90% in time.
Right.
I just don't enjoy that aspect of it. So maybe that means I need an editor. But being able to do it all, except for the art, it's good for me, because I wouldn't be able to afford to do it otherwise. Like if I had to pay for the layout and the art, I just wouldn't. I'd be losing money, basically. It wouldn't pay for itself at all. Like at the moment, all it does is just break even, and that's kind of great. But if I had to sort of outsource anything else, I wouldn't. I couldn't do it. It would be impossible, because I just. I mean, even with my Kickstarter dungeon, like that did okay. That did I think it did like 22,000, but basically my printing costs went up 30% from when I first looked into it in February versus how much paper costs went up.
Right.
But because I couldn't commit, because I had no idea like of what to commit to, because I didn't want to take the risk of, because I had to pre-buy the paper because it was a very special printing technique that they used. And so I had to but basically it was like that's why I was saying earlier on where I underpriced everything because I should have sold the zines for $25, and I sold it for 15. So at $15, that project just broke even for me because there was like I think there was 10,000 just in printing cost because it was such a specialized, bespoke hand printed kind of risograph technique. So it was like 8,000. No, it's 9,000 printing. I got extra copies, which I don't know how long it'll take to sell those. They might, but then the art was a few thousand. The shipping was 5,000. To ship all those.
Yeah.
And the packaging was 700, 800. Just the fucking envelopes. So
Yeah,
I learned
everybody's making money, but you.
Yeah. So I learned a lot in doing it. And what I learned is basically next time I have to charge a lot more for the zine. That's what I learned. I learned that I have to charge a lot more for the zine because if I don't, then I'm going to have spent a year doing work and just broken even. So yeah.
I found the same thing out with some of my others. The Fane of Fly God, I should have charged more. Not Fane of Fly God. During the Madlands, I definitely undercharged on that one.
Right.
But you don't know. The problem is maybe like you, it's like I think I keep thinking maybe it's that whole, going back to imposter syndrome. I'm like, nobody's going to pay, $30 for this, or nobody's going to pay.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
And it was only because Zach said for Fane when I showed it to him from Roller Game Design. They're the ones that did. They're helping with the Kickstarter and a backer kit and such. But he's like, no, I think this Fane needs to be a hardback. I'm like, there's no way. And I struggled back and forth, and I just thought, well, let's just see. So I made a hardback option at $45, and the majority, twice as many people bought the hardback as they did the soft cover.
Really, yeah. Yeah, I think I'd like to do a hardback soon. Like I'm sort of gearing up to it. I think I might do my adventure Xanadu. I might do a Xanadu remastered edition with all new art, maybe a new level, new maps, new everything, and kind of fix all the problems that were pointed out on a couple of reviews, which were good reviews. But I think that that's just that's probably that might be a hardback that I'll do because I've looked into prices and stuff already, but that just seems like another big kind of getting 1,000 books in my fucking 450 square foot New York apartment.
Right.
It's like my apartment's smaller than that room that you're in, So
right.
I mean, I'm in glamorous New York, but believe me, it's like I'm not living in a, not yet anyway, but I'm not living in a sort of Tribeca loft,
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and for me, it's
kind.
Fortunately, I've got lots of room, but I still don't want to be filling it up full of boxes.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a fun. Look, it's a fun. And look, I really appreciate what you do because I listen to every single one of your podcasts. I always get something out of it. I think you've got very interesting people on, and the podcast has regularity. Like it's always once a week. You know what I mean? Like I always see it. Can't remember when I see it. Maybe Saturdays. Is that when it comes out?
Yeah, Saturday morning.
I see it Saturdays, and I always listen to it kind of on the day because I usually go to the gym every couple of days or go for a walk to go grocery shopping, and I always like to listen to podcasts when I do that, and I always listen to yours because I think you've got kind of you've got guests on who are making stuff and talking about the business of making stuff. And I really like Levy Combs, who you've had on a few times. He's an interesting creator, kind of very prolific. He's very prolific. He's always got stuff out. And he's very positive sort of a guy too.
Right.
He's a very positive sort of a guy. Who's got good things to. He's kind of generous. You know what I mean? Like, and no, but I think you're kind of one of the only. I don't know. You're one of the only podcasts that has, these, you're talking about some, like, there's just practical things, So I get a lot out of it because it's always someone talking about a Kickstarter or fulfillment or just something that's kind of very like obviously what you're interested in too, but it's just like it's kind of like it's all very like usable kind of information.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's uh for a while there I wasn't sure. It was numbers were kind of down, but then I finally came to a point where it's like I enjoy doing this. I enjoy meeting people, and it's worthwhile to me, and I've got enough people listening to it that I'm fine with. If it never ever goes beyond what it is, it's fine. And it's been working out. So
yeah, well, it's a good little niche, Jeff. It's a good kind of it's a good I think it's a great kind of yeah, and you know, it's and it's kind of I like your introductions a lot too. It's just a good I like the introductions. I like the music. It's just a nice kind of
oh,
podcast.
thank you.
Yeah, and I like how some of the episodes, just kind of go on for quite a while because I enjoy that long form kind of very casual. Like it feels like very unscripted, very unplanned. It just kind of like it's just like a conversation.
And I also find it's kind of fun. There's just a
You know?
lot of just different people out there doing different things, and
Oh
I'm
yeah, yeah.
kind of curious. It's just amazing how many people are out there doing. I mean, maybe not amazing, but it's kind of neat to see, other people's perspectives that are just, I don't know. It's quite an interesting, eclectic group of people that we are.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely got a really diverse group of people from I think people in gaming are really from all walks of life, and all ages, like there's like and it's interesting too because it seems like I mean I'm 50, and there's lots of seems like there's lots of people kind of my age, my generation, who probably had my trajectory and yours. They just started when they were young. They took a big break because
Right.
they had to do life, and they had to do stuff, and then they kind of rediscovered the hobby in their 40s, and then they kind of think, oh, maybe I can do it too, and you know I'll give it a go. Like I'll sort of try and make some stuff because it's like a because it's I don't know what it is. It's like a because you have the passion and the knowledge, and you've got that kind of like you've got the yeah, and I find that satisfying that you can make stuff and have a creative outlet, and there's kind of an audience for it who kind of appreciates it. It's kind of just really really great. I mean, it's a great community, the RPG community, I think.
I don't think I don't think I could have be doing what I'm doing now at a younger point in my life.
No, I couldn't either. I agree.
And I don't know whatever the experiences, the headspace, I don't know what it is, but I look at stuff I've done in the past. It was just chaotic for some reason. I've hit an age where everything's starting to gel for this. I don't know. I find it kind of interesting.
Yeah, I just don't think yeah, I'm the same. I just think I just couldn't have done it. I would have just been too distracted by other things, at other points in my life,
Right.
because whereas now I'm kind of happy just kind of being internalized, sitting behind a computer and writing. I just think I would have been just too distracted by being pulled left, right, and center into sort of putting my attention into other places as opposed to like games, And I don't know why it's happened that way. I think a big kind of impetus for me was COVID, because when that happened, when that everything got shut down, that's when I started to write because I had nothing else to do. Like I kind of didn't have work. I just didn't have anything else to do, and because of that, I sort of thought, oh, I can't go out, I can't do my work anymore. It's like, well, what am I going to do? And I kind of thought, oh, well, I've got to occupy myself somehow. And that's when I actually started to write, was in, I think, April of 2019. That was felt like the perfect time to start.
it is kind of strange of, all those the what things, we'll just say positive things from all that have that occurred. I'm not saying it's justifies or makes it worthwhile, but it definitely had, for all of its negatives, it definitely has, I think, helped a lot of people rethink and redirect in very positive ways.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was certainly the positive thing for me. Was just to have a bit of time out and a bit of quiet, and I also think that that's why games probably were developed in the Midwest, because you couldn't develop games in New York because it's too
It's,
busy.
yeah, yeah,
It's
it's too many things to do.
too many things to do. Whereas, like, you can't, you know, you need a place for your imagination to kind of inhabit, and I think, and so much so that it's actually made me think about moving out and moving to somewhere like possibly the Midwest, just to get away from the distraction of the city,
Oh
it's
yeah,
pretty.
it's definitely, I live in a small town, maybe like 1,500 people. It's definitely a different pace. And I've had
Yeah.
people who came from California, and I said to her, it's like, wow, like, for you to move out this way, it'd be a negative thing. She's like, oh no. She goes, I like to sit in my backyard and just watch the corn, look at the corn. Like,
Oh, no, no. Well, I mean, you sort of get to a certain age where that becomes really appealing, or really appealing. It's like where doing the other stuff just it's just like that veneer sort of fades, and then I don't know. I sort of I'm sort of to an age where I sort of think, living in an imagined world and building it and sharing it is just something that's kind of super satisfying, because and making something, that it's just where there's an audience for it. You know, you don't have to go out. You can just kind of do what we're doing. It's just I think, God, that's kind of really cool. It's really cool that you can do that.
right. And I think too, if you're able to, I mean, where I live, it's not necessarily the greatest place to live, but and there's other places where it's just the properties or the cost of living is fairly reasonable.
Where
Um,
you are,
oh yeah,
right? What's the closest city to you?
Peoria, Peoria,
Right.
Peoria,
What state are you in?
Illinois.
Illinois, right, right,
Now, North Carolina would be really an expensive place, or if you go to the south,
right.
but I'm like 2.5 hours from Chicago,
Okay, yeah, yeah,
in like 3 hours from St. Louis.
right,
I live in a town called Metamora, and it's just a bedroom community for people working in Peoria.
right, right, right. Yeah, I mean, where I live is really great for I mean, it's great for culture and stuff, but it's just such an expensive place to live. Like, you're always just working kind of long hours just to kind of pay the rent here. It's like really full on, and there's not, the quality of life is okay, but it's kind of like but you are. I'm sure like you'll get a lot more space in an area like yours for the money that I'm paying.
Oh yeah,
A lot,
yeah.
lot more living space.
Yeah, yes, we've got, yeah, a huge basement. We've got 3 bedrooms upstairs. We've got an office area.
No, it's great.
Yeah, it's right. Price per square footage, it's very reasonable, but it's just
No.
but yeah, but there's, as far as culturally goes, I mean, it's not the same. But if you want to go on hikes, there's plenty of parks with trails. And if you want to go cycling, country roads are blacktop with almost no traffic, and they go on for miles in a grid that you can go however far you want, wherever direction you want. Things like that are pretty nice.
Yeah, no, that that all sounds very, very, very nice. So, you know, yeah, but, hopefully in the next couple of years, because I'm looking into it. It's just a question of where. Like
That
just
is
a just a question of where I will do it. You know.
right, because it's yes, and that's what's hard because you know, like Wisconsin. If you want to live up in like northern Wisconsin, you can get probably you can get some great land, fairly cheap, uh, beautiful area, but it's also going to be cold for 7 months out of the year, but
Yeah,
then
yeah.
maybe you like that. I don't know. Or you could go to the
The
south and it would be the
the
opposite, or
the cold
you
doesn't the cold doesn't bother me. I actually find the cold is very I mean it's very I think the cold is very good weather for being creative. I don't think heat is very conducive to creativity. Like living in Florida might not be the best for kind of
oh
might not be the best for kind of writing.
for me it's daylight. That's the biggest thing for me, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I find that in New York, it's the winter time that I actually feel really good. You know, you get to dress up, you get to rug up, and I think you get to you know I get to write for a long time. Like summertime here is kind of impossible for doing any sort of creative work. It's just really I find it really difficult, really difficult.
So is that during the 3 months that you're having problems was during the summer?
Kind of, yeah, yeah. But I think I was okay last summer, but I think I kind of burnt out after I fulfilled the Kickstarter. Just kind of like I don't know why, but and only slowly getting back into it. So just who knows? I think you know, you sort of play with the muse while she's while she's in a playful mode. I think I don't know. It's just it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's
Creative
hard.
slumps. It's hard to get out of sometimes.
I've been pretty fortunate. I never got to that kind of. I'm not gotten to that burnout. Um,
Mm-mm.
but I think I don't know why. I just know my current job. I'd like to be able to retire in a couple of years, and I'm trying to get everything to a point where I can actually do this for a portion of my income.
That'd be great. Be fantastic. Well, I
Yeah.
think Look, I mean, I think like from what I've seen, to make an income out of this, you have to make a lot of stuff, And I think
Yep.
someone who seems like they're doing really well, doing, doing it all themselves is Philip Reed. Seems to be doing pretty well out of this, like like I think he does like a Kickstarter a month, like or every he does like about fucking 8 to 10 Kickstarters a year, and I think he put his income up like what he made on the Kickstarters, I think on Facebook or something, and I think last year he clocked in about 130 grand, 140 grand out of Kickstarters. Now I'm not sure how much of that is like obviously take home,
I heard he
but
bought a Tesla 1 year.
from Kickstarter.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised, but his Kickstarters do like, and look, I don't know how much a fan base has the appetite to buy so many Kickstarters, but I think his Kickstarters are doing anywhere between 10 to 25,000 each. And he does like a lot of things for Milk Blog. He does a lot of these small modest books,
He
and he does
experiments.
experiments with formats. But I think he's got like a good model, but his model is like making a lot of stuff, and I think kind of that's I think you either need to make a big kind of hit, like a big hardcover that's whatever, or I think you need to do like what he's doing, where you just have a rhythm of doing like say 4 Kickstarters a year, 5 Kickstarters a year. But I think he's got like and I bought a lot of his Kickstarters, and they're not it's not like they're massively ambitious. You know, they're like, you know, the zines that he puts out are like 36 pages. They're not like 250-page books. You know, they're like 36-page kind of
Right.
A5 zines. You know, like 20 character classes for Mork Borg or Troika, or 50 magic items, or just kind of useful stuff that people will have at a table. But I think he's just perfected he's just churning that stuff. And I think that's what you got to kind of do and I think the other thing that helps, which I've sort of found with my modest store, is like the more stuff you have out there, the more like trickle in income there is from kind of everything, you know, because you'll find that when, you know, like when someone buys something on my store, like no one ever buys one thing. Everyone buys like at least two things. Now I've only got 5 things up there, or, you know, I've got 4 things up there. One of them's a DCC version of an adventure. But I think when I have 6 things up there, or 8 things, that, because people will buy old stuff, you know, people will buy back catalog, you know,
Right.
and I think the other thing is having your own store, which I built, you know, just from one of these online e-commerce things, but I think having back catalog, where if you can have 10 products, which I hope to do, I mean, then, you know, there might be something for everyone, you know, like that. But I think that's one of the keys, is just having a lot of product, you know.
So yeah, I just got a website. I'm getting it going. So my plan is by the end of the year have a web store going.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'm trying to do is with Gary's appendix, I plan on doing the same thing with Traveler. I'm going to give that a go.
All right. Writing for Traveler, doing something for Traveler.
Well, it will be a zine for material that's usable with Traveler.
Oh, it'd be great. It'd be great.
So
Traveler's a great game. Classic Traveler is one of my favorite games.
So I'm thinking is if I can, you know, if that does well, and the key is on the stuff is paying people to do it. Journey of the Madlands, I'm kind of skeptical how well this. I think I'll do at least as well the second one, probably better than the first one, but that one's taken me a lot of writing to get. It takes a lot of energy for me to do one of those. But I think
Right.
for the Traveler, and especially for Gary's appendix, I'm able to hire writing out. So my goal is
Right.
to, if I can start getting enough of these going, these periodicals get the right people writing. I'm hoping that's what's going to be the key.
Are you going to do for Classic Traveler or Mongoose?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to need to do it for the Cephas engine.
Oh, because of the gaming license?
Yes.
Right.
But really the stuff I'm planning on putting in there is not going to be like, I'm not planning on doing vehicles and guns and, you know, whatever. I'm actually planning on more you know, set pieces and things for the GM to use for their settings.
Right. I actually still think I still think that Classic Traveler is one of the most elegant games ever written.
Yeah.
I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful game. Like it's just a stunning. It's just so elegant. You know, it's just everything about it. Just, you know, the you know, the 8+ mechanic, the skill system. You know, I just think it's just such a lovely, lovely game.
Well, for like 120 pages, you have character creation, you have equipment, you have all your skills, you have world generation, starship generation, you got trading rules, you got, you know, it's just like, I don't know how I got it all in 120 pages.
Yeah, and that world generation is just unbelievable. You know the way you do the atmosphere, the ground, the trade, the tech levels. It's just I've listened to Mark Miller speak a few times at GaryCon, and one of the most memorable times was in 2019. He gave a talk in one of the apartments at GaryCon, and it was me and like 6 other people. Spent like a couple of hours with him. And he was just, you know, I've got photos of it, which I took, you know, and it was just him talking about to 6 people, like was there because I think it was going to be somewhere, and then they moved it or something, and then it was actually one of the suites. You know, we were just sitting around lounges and stuff, and he talked to us about the beginning of Traveller, and he did say that the reason why they they didn't have art because they couldn't afford it, but Traveller still has one of the great covers, one of the great designs of covers. You know, it's got that lovely red kind of line.
It's perfect.
You know, that you know, it's just got it, and he did also say that he wanted to make a very generic game, and everyone thought in those days that nobody wanted, you know, his thought when he wrote Traveller was that people were going to write their own adventures, which they never did. And it wasn't until sort of a few years later that they actually released their kind of system, their kind of, you know, their world setting, where they released the other books. What was the Imperium? Was that
yes.
it? They did the Imperium because and that's when they did adventures, because I think the thinking back then was that they would just release the rules, and the players would actually write their own stuff, but nobody ever did that. And he said that what gave him the biggest kind of boost, what gave Traveller the biggest boost was, which is what really propelled it, was the release of Star Wars. At that time was something that really gave it a huge kind of kick, you know. But you know, but it was very different to Star Wars. Like, it wasn't science fantasy; it was kind of that 50s kind of sci-fi. Like, he mentioned some of his authors that he was reading at the time, but he sort of claims to have read like almost every sci-fi book ever written in the 60s, you know, because he was such a big sci-fi fan that he said he read every single novel ever published in the 60s that was science fiction. and up to the mid 70s as well. He just read kind of every single thing that came out, and he was just a huge fan of. Talked about some authors, and there were a few series that he'd actually read. I picked a couple up. They weren't for me, but I could kind of see how they had a massive influence on kind of travel, this kind of military kind of sci-fi, you know. But you know, kind of world exploration and stuff like that. But you know, going to different planets and that. But I thought it was just one of the nicest kind of people. I thought it was one of the nicest, most generous kind of creators. And it's, you know, it's amazing. He's just kind of there at GaryCon sharing. And he's just like one of the key people. He's like one of the great game designers, that guy.
All right. Yeah. In fact, he's from Bloomington, Illinois, which is just like 45 minutes from my house.
Right. Yeah, I think he's been in the same place for a long time, I think.
Yeah, Game Designers Workshop was out of Bloomington. And Decatur, Illinois, which is like maybe 40 miles south of Bloomington, is where Judges Guild was.
Interesting, right.
Like, it's strange that the, you know, two majors are, you know, here, and it's kind of odd.
Yeah. No, he's it's sort of funny. Like, I don't know. I bought Traveller 5 that he did on Kickstarter a few years ago. Have you seen that? The 3 volumes, which is
I've seen the books. I've been tempted.
It's unplayable. I mean, you can't.
I know it is.
But in terms of complexity and just how over the top, like, he actually wrote the majority of it, and it's kind of amazing for just how granular, you know, it sort of gets, you know. It's like Traveller on fucking a million steroids, you know. It's just like there's just charts and tables for absolutely everything you can kind of think of, you know. And I mean, it's quite a feat, you know. It's quite a feat of kind of like a scientific manual or something. It's just over the top, but it's actually worth having because it's just so kind of peculiar. But I don't think. Well, I couldn't imagine anybody ever playing.
I think some of it would be good in parts. I think, from what I understand, is like for World Generation, there's some stuff I think would be very great for World Generation. I wouldn't want to play the game, but I think there's portions of what I understand. There's portions of it that are just very good.
Oh no, no. There's parts which are amazing because I think he actually talked about Traveller 5 in GaryCon, and he and because I think what compelled the game is that he had so many requests over like decades of what players wanted to be able to do within Traveller. And so he said, well, I'm just going to make the tools for them to be able to do that, you know? And he said, and he said, well, I had requests for people that wanted to do this. So I gave them this table and they wanted to do that. So I've got this table in there for them and they wanted to do this and they wanted to do that. So I'd made this table for them. And it's just basically, so everything that people always wanted to do, that's what he put into Traveller 5 to be able to do everything, you know, but to actually do everything in a mechanical way.
Right.
Not to just kind of say you're doing it like OSR it. It's just no, there's a mechanic for it and there's tables and you roll and here's how you do it, you know?
So what I find is interesting is world generation. I've kind of played around with it with Mindjammer. Also, it seemed like the Coriolis and Alien, they both have planetary generations, system generations, but they are seem like everything still falls under, even though I think there are improvements, even with Stars Without Number, as they are still at the chassis of it is still Traveller, the world generation. It's like the logic, all that logic is really still built into it.
Oh yeah, I mean he sort of, you know, I think he kind of invented that basically, you know.
Yeah,
It's just, I mean, it's so elegant and so simple, but I think Mark Miller kind of just he owns that. He invented all that kind of stuff.
But I mean, like nobody's able to break away from that. Like it's like the
you
bicycle.
You can't because it's so perfect.
Yeah, it's like you may change, you know, like the bicycles are a little different now than they were in the 1920s. You know, they've got a little bit different frame, but still the geometry is still the same, ratios are still the same. It's just like it's just
I don't think you can. I think if you're rolling dice on the table, I don't think you can break away from Traveller in terms of generating like a world, for example, because, and I don't know if you ever heard him talk about it, but he talked about why he did that, and he said that the reason why he did that is because he said to someone in the group, well, the reason why I did that is because like he said, name a kind of planet. And he goes, okay, you've got a desert planet, you've got a water planet, you've got this planet. Now name, but you know, try doing that 1,000 times and giving it all the complexity of atmospheres and trade, you know, because you can't do it without tables. You know, you can't, because no one has the imaginative scope to just come up with like tons and tons of different kinds of planets with different inhabitants and different atmospheres and gravity and whatever.
Right, but you also have to say, well, this only works with these kinds of work. Like there's still like a even though it's probably not fully scientifically accurate, it still tries to maintain some level of semblance of scientific accuracy.
No, absolutely. And there's also the flavor element. Like he kind of says, well, if you generate like a water world, which is like unbelievably wealthy and under a totalitarian government, but has very little population and a very low tech level, why is that?
Right.
Like, what's the story there, you know, about this kind of world, you know, or if you have, you know what I mean? So, and it has like, for example, deadly atmosphere. Like, what's the story about this world? Like, why is it wealthy? Like, where does it get its resources? Like, what does the government do? Like, why is the tech level so low, but why is it so wealthy? And that's just an interesting sort of trigger, you know, to come up with, you know, like a setting, you know. And he said that the tables kind of just allow you to do that because they just push your imagination into coming up with things that just shouldn't kind of be together, but they are, you know. But no, he really came up with some just such great ideas, you know, like you know, just great ideas, you know, like, you know, I mean, there's no leveling in Traveller, you know, there's just kind of like maybe getting better with skills and, you know, like just yeah, I wish I played more of it. The only time I actually play Traveller is only at conventions, and I play with I usually play classic Traveller at least once because I'm going to GaryCon next year. So, and usually I've played Traveller at every GaryCon I've been to, and I used to go to GameholeCon. I didn't go to the last one, but I've been to a couple of those, and I always try and play a classic Traveller session with a great Traveller referee called Victor Raymond.
Okay.
Who lives in Madison, and he actually used to play. He's played Traveller for 40 years, and he used to actually play with Professor M.A.R. Barker in Tecumel for 20 years.
My.
He played in a 20-year campaign with M.A.R. Barker, and he's actually one of the great. He's someone that you should maybe have on or meet, Victor Raymond. Like he does a Tecumel podcast.
Okay.
With James Malashevsky. But
right.
but if you are if you he's on Facebook, he's on like the OSR group, but he's been on podcasts. But if you want someone to talk about the early days of who used to know a lot of these people and who's played since the 70s, he's like a really fascinating he's like an amazing kind of intellect, you know.
So what's his name again?
Victor Raymond. Yeah, he's someone that's really, you know, really knowledgeable about Traveller, Empire of the Petal Throne. I think he runs a big gaming group in Madison. I can't remember what it's called, but he tells me that they meet every Tuesday or once a month on a Tuesday or something like that. And, you know, usually like 60 to 80 people come to some community hall and they game all night. But he's always at the cons. He's always at GaryCon. He's always, I think he's at North Texas, and he's always at Gamehole. But he's someone that, yeah, if you ever wanted to have a discussion about classic Traveller, Empire, the Petal Throne, then he's your guy.
All righty, a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
Well, I probably should let you go now, Vasili. It's
all right, Jeff. Yeah, I'm gonna
because you're an hour in the future, so it's getting late. But you New Yorkers are used to staying up late. We hear
not me. No.
Oh, okay.
I'm in bed by 11 usually.
Well, it's like for us. But anyway, well, you have a good night, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks again. All right. Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.